It is Sunday night in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come in and gather around. Sorry we're late. I was on the phone with the family of a recruit, someone who recently committed, just getting some stories there. Paul Konerdijk, I think, just published a story also. Go over to SpartanMag.com, check it all out. Part of the On3 network, moved over to On3 December 1st. A lot of you probably aware of that. Some of you might not be aware. Go to SpartanMag.com. You'll find it over the On3 network. We're doing a lot of work over there. Pretty happy with the product at this point. Happy with the feedback we're getting from our subscribers, the maggers that have moved over there after a long time being at Rivals.com for about 20 years. Got nothing but respect for Rivals.com and everything they did for Spartan Mag and everything over the years. Certainly a lot of respect to those people. A lot of good people over there. A lot of good friends still. A lot of friends at On3. Also, guys that I worked with going back to the very, very early days. And it's just good all the way around, and it's made possible by the subscribers, the maggers. We certainly appreciate you guys. We're hoping to hear from Big Movie tonight, and I think Noah Sprunger is going to be coming in and talk a little bit recruiting. Michigan State, Big D commitment earlier today. You probably saw it over at Spartan Mag and elsewhere on the internet. Also, coming off the heels of Michigan State getting five big commitments Thursday and Friday. We'll be talking about that, breaking it down a little bit, maybe looking at some film, taking some questions, mailbag style, that we received over at the Underground Bunker message board. Mailbag style, we asked people to go ahead and ask questions, and we will field those here. Let me turn this up a little bit. That should be a little bit better. Sorry, we were a little bit low. And we're just we're going to dig into it. We appreciate everybody coming in. We will have to put a little post over on Twitter to invite people in here in a moment. But first, we'll just go to the first question right away. All right, it's pretty, it's an all-encompassing question here. Joe from Northville. He says, Jim, can you give us your thoughts on where Michigan State stands in recruiting after the recent wave of commitments? What is the staff looking for? Are they looking to the portal and still evaluating high school players? Where do you expect this class to finish in terms of commitments, portal, and otherwise? Thanks to Joe from Northville for that question. Let me find my notes here so I can be a little bit more specific about numbers. All right. As far as numbers, right now Michigan State has room for 22 commitments. Unofficially, that's the number that we have over at SpartanMag.com, 22 commitments. That includes, they were up to 85 scholarships during the season. There are 13 players that are finished. Amir Speed, Daniel Barker, Ronald Williams, Van Sumeren, Kendall Brooks, Brian Green, Matt Carrick, Jacob Slade, Jared Horst, Bryce Behringer, Tyler Hunt, Jaden Reed, Xavier Henderson. Those 13 were on scholarship. There's 9 others that are in the portal. Jeremy Bernard, Carson Castile, Deshaun Mallory, Jack Stone, Jalen Hunt, Terry Lockett, Michael Fletcher, Chase Carter, Jarek Broussard. Those 9 plus 13 equals 22. They were at 85 this year. There's 22 scholarships available. Michigan State with 16 commitments right now. 17 if you count Samar Melvin. He's the transfer from Wisconsin. We're still nailing that one down as to whether he is on athletic scholarship. Jalen Franklin's coming in, tight end from Wisconsin, and Adamola Faleye from Norfolk State. They're both walk-ons. They'll both still get they're good students, able to transfer in. They're able to get scholarship money in other ways. It's my understanding that happens a lot in various sports. Probably not football scholarships for those guys. Not sure about Samar Melvin right now. But right now, Michigan State 16 commitments, 17 if you count Melvin. We'll just go at 16 right now. So that would leave them with 6 scholarships available. I'm thinking Michigan State wants at least 1 offensive lineman, at least 1 defensive tackle. And now that the decommitment happened earlier today, hold on a second here. Let me check a message. All right, the decommitment that happened earlier today with Javon Brown, they're going to need 1 linebacker, maybe 2. Some interesting movement going on there. So 6 are available, 1 offensive lineman, 1 defensive tackle, 1 or 2 linebackers. That's 4. Might be room for 2 more. Now, if Michigan State has more players go to the portal, which I think is still possible, then that number of 22 available scholarships can climb up to 25. I talked to Mel Tucker about it before the Indiana game, and he said they expected to have a full class. And I took that to mean a full class of 25 when you combine high school players and transfers. So 22 available right now. Wouldn't be surprised if 3 more go to the portal one way or another. Let me go ahead and put this information out on Twitter just to get the crowd a little bit more lively here. We appreciate everybody coming in and supporting Spartan Mag Live, SpartanMag.com, and all of you that are Maggers already. If you're not a Magger already, what is a Magger? A Magger is a subscriber to SpartanMag.com. If you're not a Magger, go over to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. It's only $1, and that subscription will carry you through August 31st. That's right, $1, and you'll be good through August 31st. Try us out. Test drive us. Mag Live, SpartanMag.com, like it. And all of you that are Maggers. And make sure to let us know if you're a new subscriber. There's a lot of new subscribers over there coming in all the time, and we appreciate that. So go to SpartanMag.com. $1 will take you all the way to the beginning of kickoff for the 2023 season. And I'm going to go ahead and post this right now. We are live via Spartan Mag Live. All right. Hope the vocal cords are okay. I was taking good care of them all weekend. Didn't do any yelling or anything, but they're already starting to go south on me a little bit. I'm going to try to find an area where I'm not taxing those vocal cords too much, but we appreciate the questions that have been posted. And let's get to question number 2. While we wait, we'll see if we get Big Movie or not. He said earlier tonight he'd be available, but we just have to wait and see. All right, question number 2. All right, now this might not pertain to what's going on with recruiting right now, but I'll answer the question. It's from a poster from Parts Unknown. He says, you mentioned on the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com that Southeastern Louisiana cornerback Zy Alexander is everything you thought Amir's speed would be. Can you elaborate on what you saw with his film? All right, first of all, Zy Alexander is a guy that Michigan State offered, 6'3" corner, Southeastern Louisiana. And they offered him, but I don't know if he'll be coming in for a visit or not. He's a transfer, so his recruitment will go into January, quite possibly. I spoke with his high school coach, and he's everything that I thought he would be on. I thought he was great on film. And I talked to his coach, Terry Martin. And Terry Martin has sent like 5 players to LSU in the last 15 years. And he says this guy's right there with any of them. Anyway, we don't need to talk about Zy Alexander too much yet. 6'3", big corner, big safety. He's excellent. I think he was injured as a high school junior. And then COVID, I think. So he became a very underrated, under-recruited player. And freshman was excellent at Southeast Louisiana. Like 6 interceptions, was FCS All-American, I think, or second team as a freshman. Anyway, I mean, the Hurricanes are in on him, Baylor, and some others. And you know what? Actually, I heard that people were trying to get him into the portal last year at this time. The coach told me there was a team that was in the top 10 that called him ahead of time, not naming any names, and said, hey, if he's in the portal, we'll take him. So he's a Louisiana kid. Michigan State has some connections down there, but I don't know if that one's going any further. Michigan State, I think, would like it to, but we'll talk about him more if visits materialize, but I think it's going to be hard to get him. I think some big-timers will be in on him down there. Question number 3, Sola from Westland, Michigan says, I thought it'd be cool if you could break down the recent commitments a little bit. Can you give us some thoughts on each guy? Hold your thought right there. We will talk about some of those commitments. Let me go over here to the comment area. We do invite people to come over and comment over in the comment area. Marlowe's coming in first. First time Marlowe has been the first one in. He's fired up for signing day coming up on Wednesday. And all your signing day coverage and analysis, you can find that at SpartanMag.com. Behind the paywall for subscribers, also some free information also. A lot of free content, Spartan Mag as well. Brian Bemis says, hey, comp. Ben Chi says, comp. JC1829. Jay Chevy checking in from Washington, D.C. Ben Chi says, coming. Clark Marier, go green from Sylvania, Ohio, located right down I-75. So Marlowe, man, he's in first. He's running the point. Brian Bemis, he's the shooting guard. Ben Chi, he's the 3. JC829, he's the stretch 4. And Clark Marier is in the middle. Not the most intimidating name for a center, but France is pretty strong in basketball these days. Not bad in soccer either. All right, so Mark Galfano says some recruiting movement, lots to dig into. All right, so as far as the big news today, Javon Brown decommitted on Sunday, 4-star linebacker for Lauderdale St. Thomas Aquinas. Some indications Kentucky's in there a little bit. Might have jostled him free. some indications Michigan State. We'll see what Michigan State does in the linebacker position. You know, Michigan State went and visited the Harris twins, Michael Harris, Andrew Harris, guys from Florida, a couple of guys that are borderline 3-star, 4-star type of guys. I really like both of those guys. They visited Michigan State in June, Michael Harris, Andrew Harris. Linebackers, but different type of linebackers. Michael Harris is more of an edge guy. Andrew Harris more of a punishing inside linebacker type. So they don't necessarily play the same linebacker position, although they're twins. So they committed to Central Florida during the summer, but Central Florida's defensive coordinator and linebackers coach was recently hired at Arkansas just this weekend, I think it was. So that hiring of Central Florida's linebackers coach, also the coordinator, going to Arkansas, jostled them loose. Michigan State had a visit with the Harris twins 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if that was at school or in home. We're still trying to verify that. But in the meantime, that coach going to Arkansas, it's very intriguing that Michigan State would get a decommitment from Javon Brown right around the same time period that the Harris twins decommit. Michigan State liked those guys. They visited. Then Michigan State went and had a visit with him 2 weeks ago. However, is there a chance Arkansas could get in there with their coach trying to get them to follow him to Arkansas? It's certainly a possibility. Looks like we got Mubi calling in right now. I have to change this around a little bit. Got to plug in over here. We'll see what Mubi's got to say. All right, let's see if it all works this time. So the Harris twins, that's really interesting. The timing of that could be some smoke in Michigan State's favor, but don't overlook the possibility of Arkansas getting in there as well. Hey, if it turns out that Michigan State gets the Harris twins, I would say that would be an overall net positive trade in the transaction for the players to be named later from the Javon Brown decommitment.
Call from
Big move.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, let's go out to East Lansing, Michigan. And our good friend, Ron Armstrong, Big Mooby, known affectionately as Big Mooby over at SpartanMag.com, Underground Bunker Message Board. He's a superstar over there. And we certainly love to get his insight. Currently lifelong Spartan dog from the early 90s. And always, let's bring him in. Ron, how you doing, man? You doing okay?
Oh, yeah. What's going on, Cop? Glad to be back with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. I know it's a big weekend for your family. Don't need to go into details there unless you want to, but it's got to be a happy time for you. We appreciate you taking some time out to talk some Michigan State football right now. And as you know, at this point in the season, December, heading towards signing day on Wednesday, it's always recruiting season, especially right now. And for Michigan State football fans, they're eagerly anticipating what's going to happen with the culmination of this recruiting class as it continues to come together. Interestingly, today, Michigan State had a decommitment from Javon Brown. There's some conjecture about what's going on there. In the meantime, I mentioned earlier on the show that Michael Harris and Andrew Harris announced just a little bit ago, just maybe 30 minutes ago, that they have decommitted from Central Florida. Could Michigan State be in there? They had an official visit from the Twins during the summer. They had a visit with them a couple of weeks ago down in Florida. Also a possibility that Arkansas could be getting in there as well. But just by and large, Ron, I just want to open up the can with you right now and just ask you, of all the recruiting movement that's taken place in the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What do you think's going on here?
I guess we're going to say one word. I think activity. It's been a whole lot of activity. I think, as we move forward in this new age of recruiting, I think fans are going to have to get used to a little bit of uncertainty in the margins. I think there's going to be guys that'll leave and guys that'll jump in, and I think we just kind of have to give the staff time to let things shake out and then make our final assessments. at the end, if you're on this roller coaster ride of flips and decommitments and portals, and I think it could be a little bit of a struggle for some fans to kind of make sense of it all. But I think if we just take a step back and wait till the final tally is in, and we can kind of judge the class in its entirety, because I think there's some good football players that we've been able to gain commitments from. Ultimately, the way things are, we got to wait till they sign and they're in the fold. But just the core of the class, I do like. I think we've talked about some of the numbers that that were a concern, but it seems like if I were to just kind of look, I think the early returns are we still have some work to do to be able to recruit with the big boys, but I do think there's some folks that we can not necessarily trust their evaluating skills, but use their ability to evaluate and come in and flip some of those kids. So I think sometimes you get the bull, sometimes the bull gets you, I guess is a sort of way to put it.
Mm-hmm. And this weekend, running back was interesting with Michigan State. They were in it with Kedrick Rizcano. Had a commitment from him most of the year. He decommitted in October. Michigan State got back in there, was looking pretty good with him. Then yesterday, he commits to Ole Miss. Some interesting back and forth there. In the meantime, Michigan State had an official visit from UConn. Transfer portal running back Nate Carter. And Carter was extremely happy to commit to Michigan State earlier today. He's very fired up about that. So Michigan State was in there with Rizcano. Rizcano was a 4-star. Rizcano's got some ability. I kind of thought that Ole Miss was headed toward the Dowdell kid who's committed to Oregon. Dowdell's a big back who I really like. And Rizcano's kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss had Dowdell ahead of Rizcano. Rizcano's got some ability. Texas recruit. Came down to the last week, and there was a lot of back and forth there, hitting the ball back and forth in that situation. But Michigan State ends up with Nate Carter transferring in from UConn. I haven't looked to see. I watched the Nate Carter film earlier today, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. I don't know what else was out there in terms of running backs in the transfer portal. I'd like to go look to see exactly who's ranking them and who has who where. But Nate Carter looks pretty good to me. It's interesting that he wears number 26 because I'm like, man, that guy reminds me of Mark Renaud a little bit. And I went back and rewatched some highlights from Michigan State's memorable victory over Penn State, 1997. Those of you that are old enough to remember, Michigan State had Mark Renaud and Cedric Irvin each rushed for over 200 yards that day. That's the first time that had ever happened in college football history at the Division I level. Mark Renaud was certainly a good running back at Michigan State over the years. But that's who Nate Carter reminds me of. Maybe not quite as fast as Renaud. Renaud had good speed, not great speed. I think Carter not quite as much speed, but similar back in my opinion. In terms of all-around ability, I would compare Nathan Carter a little bit to he's kind of an Elijah Collins type running back in my opinion. He might prove to be better than that. I certainly didn't know Kenneth Walker was going to be as good as he was, but I think it's interesting that Michigan State went and got a good proven running back at that level who's seeking to move up rather than maybe a 4-star running back who's done big things at other programs, making a lateral movement or even a move down. It's not like they went and got an Alabama running back, an Auburn running back, Wisconsin running back like they've done in the past. They went kind of the Kenneth Walker route. Walker was a pretty good one in Wake Forest who wanted a bigger role elsewhere. But Nate Carter, that was big news today. Rizcano they don't get, but they get Nate Carter. Your thoughts on the running back situation right now?
I think it would help everybody out if we just assume that nobody's going to be K9. Let's just make that assumption. Because whenever we hear transfer portal running back, folks are chasing that unicorn again. That's not going to happen. So if you can find a guy that's a plus player, that gives you quality snaps, can move the chains, not going to put the ball on the ground, to be good, good in blitz pickup, all those things that you need from a running back. If you can find that in the portal, man, I think you've helped your team. You said he compares to Mark Renaud, man. If we get a guy that runs like Mark Renaud, you want to talk about a guy that ran behind his pads when they weren't even calling it that back then. He just finished runs, man, and for a guy his size, he ran with a lot of pop. Mm-hmm. Had good speed, but just was was just a football player, man. So if that kid's anything like Mark Renaud, fans are going to be happy on Saturday in Spartan Stadium because Mark ran tough, man. He was a good football player.
All right, we just got a nice little post here. I got to put this one in here. All right, this is from Don Strait. He says, Don's on board sipping some very nice Eagle Claw. Merry Christmas, Jim, and all out there. And he says, give us your thoughts. Now, Ron, you don't have to do this, but he's asking me to give us my thoughts on Mazi Smith, friendly prosecutors, and the monopoly on virtue that Michigan claims as a birthright, unquote. That's his question. And I appreciate Don giving us a personal tip in the tip jar, personal sponsorship to Spartan Mag Live. We appreciate that, Don. Mazi Smith, I'm not spending a lot of time on that. The prosecutor's office, I've said this on Stout Show, it's obviously a kangaroo court going on down there. The prosecutor said, I'll just, flat out say it. Everybody knows this. He posted on Twitter months and months ago that he was going to be hard on, gun possession. That was going to be a big thing he was going to crack down against. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or whatever, but he didn't follow that up when it pertained to a Michigan football player. I mean, I think that's public record and plain to see. Nothing against Mazi Smith at all. But this particular prosecutor, he's been disrespectful to Michigan State. And from my understanding on Twitter and social media over the years, it's just an uncomfortable situation if I were a voter in that county. I don't know everything about it, but I've heard, some people talk about it, and Don Strait wanted me to bring it up. I don't have a lot of notes prepared on that one to back up my thoughts on that. But to your point that Michigan's monopoly on virtue, that part of it, I hear what you're saying, and it takes they have to have a lot of crap on their shoes for anyone to start noticing it. And they've got a lot of crap on their shoes right now with some of these things. But they played good football this year, and I don't know if that's enough to cover up all of it. But I don't know. It's a messy situation. But Don had that comment there. Now, Ron, let's get back to you. Talk a little bit more football. Have you had a chance to see Sean Brown, the commitment from Simi Valley, California? He had been committed to Arizona. He's like 6'2.5". He's got some size. And just looking at him, he's a guy with a big frame. He changes direction pretty nicely as Michigan State continues to try to go after bigger defensive backs. This is one guy coming out of high school who looks like he can move a little bit with some agility.
When news broke, we first kind of, he was on our radar, and I looked at the film. I sent you a text. I said, man, this is 4-star film. Mm-hmm. This kid can play. And one of the neat things about it, I'm glad to see some football evaluation pay off. Not necessarily. And I'm not going into are we recruiting off of recruiting rankings and stuff like that. But this was you had to get in and watch some film. And I thought the kid put some good tape out there. And I don't like saying good kid, but this was one of those quote good kids. This is a good football player. And I think you're right, Tucker and his staff have prioritized having bigger DBs. Now, the caveat to that is being a big DB and playing big. And I like the way the kid can move. He's not stiff in his hips, has some flexibility. So I think if you kind of forecast this out a little bit, he gives you some flexibility on where he can play in the back five. I think in certain situations we might be able to see him play corner, but if I were looking at him like this is a guy that you can have, once he gets on campus and fills out, he might be at 200 north of 200 pounds, and now you got him as or your nickel linebacker type, your hybrid linebacker type guy where he can run and hit, cover tight ends and things like that. So. All in all, it's a good football player, a lot of skill, a lot of ability, and just you want to see where the staff has him. But I do like that kid as a recruit.
And with that frame and that agility comes some flexibility. You saw as this season wound down in 2022, that Michigan State moved Xavier Henderson around a little bit. Sometimes he's a singles deep safety. Sometimes he's part of two deep. Sometimes he was up in the nickel area. Sometimes a little linebacker. And he has, Xavier Henderson's not a guy that's going to play press against every receiver in the country, but he can play man-to-man on quite a few, especially if they don't know what's coming and you've disguised it a little bit for just a few moments. But Xavier was a guy with a frame and some weight to him, some mass to him. And when they could move him around in different areas of the field to play some man-to-man or zone, but to play man-to-man, that gives flexibility, and it makes, when you've got that kind of versatility, it can make it harder for a quarterback to get quick reads on what your coverage is. And a guy like Sean Brown, theoretically, in the future, with that frame and that quickness, can give you some versatility. A guy, like you said, that can come up and cover some guys in a short area, or, be back at, traditional, safety. A guy that's played a lot of corner in the high school ranks against good competition, and he's not a fish out of water when he does it. So I'd agree with you. I think Sean Moore is an interesting one that they got in on late and pried him loose from Arizona. And there's some other guys out there that you're starting to hear that are impressed. I've never quite heard it to this degree, but you're hearing recruits say they were moved a little bit by the Big Ten tag, the Big Ten label, seeing the Big Ten patch on the jersey. It doesn't take long for generations to change their mindset on things. And going out west right now, the Big Ten has strong brand recognition. Ron, when you and I were growing up, the Pac-12, they didn't look up to anybody, in the West Coast, and for good reason. They beat Big Ten teams with regularity in the Rose Bowl. And the Pac-12 was real good this year, I thought, football. I thought they were underrated. I thought Washington was good. I thought Oregon State was good, and several others. Utah and USC was good on offense. UCLA good on offense. Good year for the Pac-12. But the recruits out there in that part of the country, and the running back who committed today, he was from upstate New York, but he was very fired up to join a program that's in the Big Ten Conference. So Michigan State to go out there and jostle Sean Brown loose, that's one of the reasons Michigan State is recruiting pretty well right now. Mel Tucker and his staff having a lot to do with it. Mel Tucker is a guy with a lot of energy out there pitching Michigan State. And, right now Michigan State's recruiting class was ranked number 21 in the country by On3 prior to today's decommitment. And it was number, I think, 19 in the Rivals.com star average rankings. With this decommitment, it's like number 45 with Rivals.com, but still number 19 in star average. Well, I just looked at it. It's 19 in star average now. I assume it's probably somewhere around 15 in star average with Rivals.com. Now, can Michigan State fill it out with 3 or 4 more good ones to get a 20-man class, 22-man class with some transfers? That remains to be seen. But Michigan State has a lot of people on base right now, and they're recruiting well. They're having to be choosy. They don't have a ton of scholarship slots, and it's been an interesting journey to this point, because just a week ago they had 22 slots but only 12 commitments, and it was kind of, from the outside looking in, it was getting a little bit hand-wringing time a little bit. But the commitments that came through on Friday, an interesting assortment of transfers, evaluation guys, and some guys that were highly ranked. I think when Michigan State coaches speak on Wednesday, Mel Tucker speaks, they'll be pretty happy with this. Now, they didn't clear the bases and hit a lot of grand slams, but in the end, I think they're in pretty good shape. Did you have a commitment about the Mozzie Smith thing before I move on?
No, that's I'm of the opinion, man, that I'm better off. I think Michigan State's better off focusing on Michigan State.
Right.
The folks down there, they're going to do what they're going to do, and that's really not my concern. I'm just focused on what Michigan State does.
Right. All right, we've got. I just want to give a thank out here to Joe Joslin. Joe Joslin wishing us a Merry Christmas. We certainly appreciate that. And also Brett Burgess. Let's see where Brett Burgess, he's got a question here in the super chat area. Appreciate Brett Burgess. Thanks a lot, Brett. Thanks, Don, and thanks to Joe as well. All right, let's see, what do we have here? All right, Brett Burgess has a question with Nix coming back, will we send a letter of intent to Moore? I don't know what he's talking about there with Dante Moore. Nix, I don't know what he means by Nix.
He's talking about Bo. He's talking about from Bo Nix at Oregon with them coming back. Will we take a flyer and send out a letter on signing day to Dante Moore? I doubt it. I think that ship has sailed. I think when you get the kid from Oregon, from the Washington State kid to flip, I think that filled that need.
Sure.
And I think that ship has sailed. But I can see where that you might take a flyer on it, but I don't think our staff's going to do that.
Oh, he says Bo Nix is coming back to Oregon. So Bo Nix coming back, does that shake it loose with Dante Moore? I don't know, but it's interesting that Bo Nix comes back because you're starting to see this now, and I heard Neuheisel talking about this the other day, that quarterbacks who might be like border-round, fifth-round draft choices can make more money staying in college now. Playing quarterback at a place like Oregon or Michigan State, a lot of other places, can command a real nice payday for an extra year of playing college. That's why a lot of these quarterbacks are staying. Michael Penix staying at Washington. He'll make some money at Washington, and he probably wants to prove that he's durable enough to go through a season again, which could make him. I think Penix is the type of guy that if he has a healthy season next year, I could see him being the number one player taken overall the following year. So Bo Nix coming back, that makes sense. But I think Michigan State's really happy with Sam Levitt, the four-star from Portland, and like you said, maybe they take a flyer and send one out there. I'm not sure. I think they're real happy with Sam, but who knows? I'd wonder a little bit more about him slipping away to, I don't know, UCLA or something like that. There's some talk there. But he also asks, how do I think Jeremy Bernard's transfer will be received in the locker room when he visits again in the fall? Of course, Jeremy Bernard going to the Washington Huskies, and the Washington Huskies will be playing at Spartan Stadium in September. I think they'll be respectful. I think players know that players have to do what players have to do. I wouldn't expect on the field there's going to be much animosity toward Jeremy Bernard. What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, no, oddly enough, man, most guys don't care. It's usually not. I mean, let me back up. It depends on where you transfer. Now, if that kid were to transfer to, the school down the road, it'd be a different deal. But, going back home or whatever the case may be, I don't think guys really care. At the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you. And most teams, you focus on the guys that are in the room, which is not the guys that have left the room. So, yeah, that won't matter. Now, do I think there will be some guys that if they got a chance to remind them of, who they are, if they got a chance to let them, light them up or something like that, oh, that'll definitely happen. But I don't think that would have, I think there might be a smidge of, when you saw Berger finish that run against Wisconsin, there might be some of that, but not in the way where they're looking to take a guy out or anything like that. And then once the game's over, his old roommates and guys that came in with him and stuff, they'll dap him up and be on to the next game.
All right, now, as far as what Michigan State is still going, who they're still pursuing, Michigan State has offensive lineman Keyshawn Blackstock, junior college guy. He's ranked the number one interior offensive lineman in the country among junior college players by On3.com. Michigan State, he's a guy from Coffeyville Community College, originally from Georgia. Michigan State still awaiting word with him. That can move the needle with his recruiting class overall. Michigan State with 2 offensive line commitments at this point. They'd like to add at least one more. Blackstock is in that category. When we look at some of these guys that are going to be visiting on or going to be signing on Wednesday, anyone in particular that catches your eye? I was looking at some film of Bai Jobe the other day, his senior film, and that guy's got some speeds, got some ability. He's creeping up into the top 100 in the rankings. Kid originally from Oklahoma, went to IMG Academy in Florida, I believe. That's where Jobe's from. And that guy, sometimes edge rushers that are true freshmen, it's hard for edge rushers to make immediate impacts, but that's someone who's got some ability for the future. When you look at the list of commitments right now, anyone catch your eye specifically that raises your eyebrow?
Well, for sure, and it's to me it's the kid that runs 10-3.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is I don't know how many and look, he may not even make an impact on the team next year. But the point I'm getting at is I don't know how many teams in the Big Ten will have a guy that runs 10-3. And I've said it over and over again. If we can bring one of those guys and one or two of those guys in every year, over time you end up with some really fast guys that can help you out. Whether it's on special teams or playing corner or just a R.J. Shelton type. But you got to have speed. So that's number one. I like Job a lot. I think we haven't had a guy like that. It's just a natural. I think Montez Sweat's the last guy we had that was that natural of a pass rusher. I like Jordan Hall a lot. It's a good class, man. There's some big bodied kids that I like. I mean, I like the core of this group. Picking up a quarterback late was a good. I mean, there's like I said, this is a really good foundation class, man. I think 2-3 years down the road when there's 7 or 8 starters from this class, this might be one of those things where you look back and say, you know what, that was the group that really built the foundation of what Coach Tucker and his staff were trying to do.
And Job is from Community Christian High School in Norman, Oklahoma, by the way. Got that wrong. I had him mixed up with Jordan Hall there. I haven't been getting much sleep lately, Ron. You have to excuse me on some of these things. I've been focusing on some of the guys that are, on the front burner right now. Job was a big commitment that they had during the summer, and he's held on all along the way for Michigan State. Now, Sam Levitt, the big commitment a few days ago from Portland, Oregon. I'm impressed that Michigan State was able to get in on him after, Michigan State had the decommitment with Bo Edmondson. That was Michigan State's choice on that one. Michigan State tried to get back involved with Dante Moore. That didn't quite work out. But for Michigan State to move in there with Sam Levitt, a guy that was committed to Washington State, and get a guy that's, a consensus 4-star type of guy. Some guys have him as a 3-star, but On3 has him ranked pretty high, number 10 quarterback in the country. That's what On3 thinks of him. Guy that put up all kinds of numbers for a team that won a state championship, 44 touchdowns, I think only 5 interceptions. And you watch his film, and he's not a guy that throws a lot of safe passes. He's not getting 44 touchdowns and 70% completions on a bunch of bubble screens. He's threading the needle through coverage, making what kind of appears to be ballsy decisions, and it keeps working out for him. Only 5 interceptions, like I said, and he's making difficult throws and processing and making difficult reads. That's what impresses me about him. And Konendijk Paul Konendijk at SpartanMag.com had a really good story, great story, speaking with Sam Levitt's high school head coach, who's a guy that was quarterbacks coach at Portland State University, so a college level quarterbacks coach. And the things that he told Paul about him, you just have to go. You have to become a Spartan Magger and go read it. It's impressive quotes from a former college quarterbacks coach, and you can see it on film when you see Levitt play. What do you think about Sam Levitt, Michigan State going out west to get that guy?
I think that's one of those where I don't know how they stumbled across the kid, but that's a big time evaluation. And if you think about it, that's stacking 2 really good looking quarterback prospects in back-to-back classes. So I mean, it's easy to kind of, oftentimes folks focus on the misses and, hey, we didn't get this guy. But man, you got 2 West Coast quarterbacks. And I'll say this, and I keep saying West Coast quarterbacks because those kids, man, they play in some sophisticated offenses out west. They're reading, they're going through the progressions and the route trees. And so when you get a kid that's putting up those kind of numbers out west, it isn't, like you said, it wasn't a ton of bubble screens, and they're running, pro style offenses, quite sophisticated pass offenses where the coach isn't telling the quarterback where the read is. They're calling the play, and you got to find where to deliver the ball to. So a lot of those quarterbacks out west, they come a little bit ahead of the game in terms of just understanding how to process and play the position from the shoulders up.
And those coverages are sophisticated too, with some athletes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're thrown into some tight windows, arm strength, quick release. It's not a big it's not a big slow arm circle when he's throwing it. It's a quick snap release. He's throwing lasers with accuracy for a winning team, and he's He's got some foot quickness too, some escapability. And when he gets downfield and starts running around, he's able to plant on one foot and go and make people miss. And, the coach said that that's so important these days in quarterbacking. It drives defenses nuts when you cover and you do it right, and then that guy makes you wrong just by holding it and running around and creating something either with his feet or elongating a play and continuing to look downfield or just tucking it and running it. And he looks like he's got the ability to run that'll translate a little bit to the college level. Not a guy that's going to go out and run for 800 yards in a season, but a guy that can take something that's presented to him. So Michigan State, Jay Johnson going out getting that one done, and back-to-back after bringing in Caton Hauser last year, back-to-back 4-star commitments for Michigan State. I think for the first time since Brian Lewerke and Messiah DeWeaver, that was, I think, 14 and 15, might have been 15 and 16. Not the easiest thing to do when you've already got somebody in the hopper, but Michigan State going out and getting 2 West Coast quarterbacks in back-to-back years,
right?
Not just 4-star guys. As for others that have happened, there was Jonathan Kim getting that kicker to transfer from North Carolina. Michigan State needed help with the kicker position. Dan Orner, a former Spartan, a guy that came in during the Nick Saban years in '97 or so, and I think Dan Orner ended up losing the kicking job to Paul Ettinger. Paul Ettinger was a punter initially, and by the way, when I was watching that Penn State-Michigan State game from 1997, Paul Ettinger was the punter on that one. I think Ettinger punted as a true freshman in '97, eventually became the kicker, and his last play ever, I think it was 1999 New Year's Day 2000, hit the game-winning field goal to beat Florida in the Citrus Bowl. But Orner came in as a scholarship kicker and lost the job to Ettinger, and Orner transferred out to North Carolina, and Orner worked with North Carolina kickers for the past 15 years or so. And Jonathan Kim was a backup kicker at North Carolina. He handled kickoff duties, and if you look at his kickoff numbers, his kickoff average length was quite a bit better than Jack Stone, for instance, but he didn't quite win the kicking job at North Carolina. Orner said the other guy was good, and he just got red hot. The other guy did during August, and he held the job all year. So Jonathan Kim was a good enough kicker to look elsewhere, and probably an interesting situation for Dan Orner. I mean, he's trying to help North Carolina, his alma mater, but he's got another kicker who's kind of a client also. And rather than having 2 guys with the Tar Heels, I don't know if he suggested, hey, look elsewhere. I don't know any of that stuff. But Jonathan Kim ends up at Michigan State, and Dan Orner, his quote to Paul Konadijk feature over at SpartanMag.com, Orner says that Jonathan Kim is a future 5th-round draft choice in the National Football League. That's heady stuff for a guy that was 2nd-round kicker last year. But we've seen second-string kickers. We've seen second-string kickers and punters become great ones. I don't want to put the great tag. I don't want to put the great tag on them yet. But Michigan State needed a kicker. They went out and got one. He's a scholarship guy. Not a lot of schools are out there flashing scholarships around, but Michigan State felt they needed to at the kicker position. That's an aggressive move by Michigan State. They think they got a good one in Jonathan Kim coming in from North Carolina.
Look, special teams is always one of those kicker especially is you don't notice it until you're struggling.
Yeah.
And so if that guy can, if we can, and just think about the kind of weapon if your kicker is good 50 and in, from 50 and in, if you feel confident that you can get points, what that does to an offense. So if we can, and then you add the touchback element to it. I can think of 2 games, just, one game off the top of my head. If, we can make a field goal and we can not have to cover a kick because it's kicked into the stands. It's a touchback. We probably beat Indiana because in that game we gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown and we missed what would have been a game-winning field goal. So, if you can solve that, that issue with bringing that guy in, that's that might be worth a win, a win or 2, or just at the very least, it's helping your defense. If they're every possession is starting at the 25-yard line, that's at the very least your defense is getting a little boost there. Then if your offense has to just only get to the 35-yard line to feel good about getting points, again, that's you're helping both units, both offense and defense by bringing in one guy. That could be huge for us. Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to back up a little bit. You asked about another guy. I don't want to forget the kid from Virginia. I think that kid's a stud, Isaiah Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
That
Wide
kid's a
receiver.
stud. So that was another kid from the class I really like a lot. So I didn't want to forget that one.
All right, we're running a video of him right now. And, Isaiah Johnson is a guy that was a running back earlier in his development. And you can kind of see that with his ability to run after the catch. I mean, he weaves around and makes people miss, and explosive athleticism, but also just outstanding hands. And somebody that didn't play football a whole lot till his junior year, and that was as a running back, and just started playing wide receiver and DB more this year. And Michigan State getting into the film and getting a guy that I think is a 4-star type of talent. I mean, when you start looking at this film,
sure.
it kind of reminds me of Keyshawn Martin in terms of a guy who kind of came out of nowhere with big-time ability like he had. Keyshawn Martin was kind of that way, and Isaiah Johnson. If he were in the state of Michigan playing 3 years, he'd be a 4-star guy, probably top 150 national type of guy.
I don't want to put, and I hate when I don't really like doing this because when folks, hear the comparisons, it kind of sends things into a different orbit. But if you just go watch Chris Olave's high school film and then watch this kid, it's just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that's when I saw it, I'm like, that kind of looks like Chris Olave, like just kind of smooth, just that smoothness to his game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, you compared to Olave, I compared with Jordan Addison a little bit.
Okay.
A guy that's like under 6'1", but just that smoothness you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
it looks different when you see it on film. It just looks different. And that kid just a player. Again, you're starting to see the beginnings of some talent evaluation happening that I think you can build. Here's the thing: when you have success through the portal, I think sometimes it's human nature to try to go back to it, but ultimately you still got to. There's a process to winning. You got to build your roster up. You got to keep building. And you do that with good evaluation, and sometimes you get lucky with a portal kid, but ultimately the evaluation and the meat and potatoes of it, you can't skip that. And I think this class is addressing a lot of the holes we saw in the roster.
it's important to get those and the 3-star evaluations. That's such a big piece of it. Especially Michigan State as you're trying.
Ultimately, to me, that's what separates.
Yeah.
5 and 7 from, I think, 9 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can find.
Who's doing really well with 3-star evaluations? A lot of those teams that were winning on Championship Saturday, Utah, Kansas State, some of those type of schools, even TCU. If you're not a superpower nuclear power, you're gonna. The teams that are great with the 3-star evaluations, that's the difference maker. I mean, that's where you get the bottom 40 going. That's where you get the competition going. That's where you get some pleasant surprises. And I agree with you that someone like Isaiah Johnson, from the wide receiver from Richmond, Virginia, that's what you're talking about. Sean Brown, the DB from Arizona. Not guaranteeing that these guys are going to be great, but when you get one from Virginia, one from Arizona, you turn on the film and you're like, okay, that makes sense, right, Ron?
For sure. And you can see, a few days, it was a little bit ago, when the guys asked me what was the difference between a reach and a flyer. And what's the difference taking a reach of a guy that's a recruit that's a reach and taking a flyer on the kid? And I talk about, to me, a flyer is I can turn on the film and I can point to something. Mm-hmm. That kid has elite speed. Mm-hmm. That kid has freaky athletic ability. That kid has incredible size or great hands or something that I can point to and say, hey, you know what? But then when you turn on the film, you see it, okay, this guy has great speed. He has great hands. He had a great run after the catch. What am I missing? Like,
right.
This kid's a player.
Right.
And then you start seeing 2 or 3 of those, and then you're like, okay, now we have a couple of them. Then you add those with the By Jobs and the Jordan Halls, and now you're starting to look at a team where, you may have had, Malik McDowell and some of these name guys that helped our team, but then there was a Denico Allen.
Yeah.
You're like, where'd this kid come from? He was just a football player. There's Keyshawn Martin. Like, where'd this kid come from? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you're going to need some of those home run 4 stars, but you also got to get in the film room and find good football players. You got to find Trey Waynes, And I think you're starting to see some of that. I think you're starting to see our staff pair some of the 4 stars with just good football players out of region that may have been overlooked or just, they just happen to find them, evaluation and working their networks and things like that and finding good players.
And this is where the recruiting also can come into play. When you start to recruit a guy who's committed to Arizona 3,000 miles from home, that guy's not just going to commit to just anybody. But
Right.
That's where the strength, the communication skills of a Mel Tucker out front, doing the recruiting, helping with the recruiting, doing the sales pitch. Just, he saw Nick Saban do it for a number of years. Not just anybody could walk in there and get that guy decommitted from Arizona, a California kid. Isaiah Johnson, Michigan State got in on him, but Michigan State was not the only one. North Carolina wanted him. South Carolina wanted him. Virginia Tech wanted him. But first place he wanted to visit was Michigan State, and he shut it down. So
Right.
you can Michigan State wasn't the only one making late evaluations on these guys. Jalen Barber and going out and getting him. Getting Sam Levitt to decommit. Sam Levitt was a 4-star, but 3-star recruiting, it takes some recruiting power to do that as well, not just the evaluation, right?
For sure. Especially when you get in some of these kids late, just to get in late and be able to close with some of these, I think underrated, really talented kids I think that's something that you can look forward and say, hey, we may be able to duplicate this next year. You can't find Kenneth Walker next year, but you can evaluate every year.
All right, so what's coming up here in the next couple of days? What are you looking for? You got your eye on anybody that could be an interesting addition coming down the stretch here?
We talked about Blackstock. I think, that's a kid that, I'd like to see us close with. Jalen Smith, the Texas, I'd like to see us close with that kid. I'm trying to think, is there anybody else? You know what? Here's the thing. I think you got to take I'd like to find a couple of portal D tackles, not necessarily the guys we had in, but you got to find some size on that defensive line. Some rotation guys, just some depth. I mean, as we all saw last year, you can go from surplus to, moving off, playing with 4 D tackles on your D line, in a matter of weeks. So you need bodies. I think, if we can go into spring ball with 7 or 8 man rotation on that D tackle, and let it sort itself out, I'd feel good about that. I don't know, man, if just because he was already enrolled, but Ken Talley's name has not come up, and I think we ought to add him, make him an addition to the 22 class.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be with the rest of the kids. I mean, that's another edge rusher. We'll see how he fits in, but like I said, I'd like to see us close with I do think. Trying to think where linebacker, man. We got to find some linebackers. I think we're a little thin there.
Mm-hmm.
Linebackers and corners, I think.
Yeah, we talked about that with Michael Harris and Andrew Harris, the Harris twins. By the way, Michael Harris is a guy that I compared a little bit to Denikos Allen, a little bit. Not quite as physical, but just, quick and stocky and converges.
Yeah, man, Denikos, that guy was a unicorn in a sense, like Kenneth Walker. You're not going to find a guy that size and that frame that just could play, man. You know what I mean?
Sure. And I remember Pat Narduzzi was floored that Denikos Allen, that there was not an NFL team that could make use of him. Narduzzi, he's outspoken. He flat out questioned the coaching of everybody in the National Football League that nobody could find.
I'm going to tell you why. Denikos Allen was probably 5 years too early.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The NFL was you're still seeing teams that were running, quarterbacks were under center still, and it wasn't as much of a passing league as it is now. Everybody has, that kind of guy on their roster now. Back then it was pretty much, Bob Sanders and, I think Honey Badger was kind of new. Eric Berry was, it wasn't a whole lot of guys like that. Now everybody's looking for that guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right. So, Ron, we appreciate your thoughts and your analysis on everything going on with the roster. We'll be talking about this through signing day and into the winter football and heading toward spring practice. One more thing, Samar Melvin, the DB from Wisconsin who's transferring in. You have any thoughts about him?
I think just another depth piece. I don't know enough about him to say if he's going to, but put it this way, there's going to be an opportunity to play. I mean, there's some. Well, I think we're so light at corner that I wouldn't rule anybody out getting a chance to play. He's just to me just another body. I don't know. I wouldn't say just a throw-in guy, but he's going to have a chance to play. And I mean, look, Wisconsin does a good job. They don't just take bums out there. So I mean, he was at Wisconsin. They do a good job evaluating players. So I think we're getting a kid that's going to work his tail off. A lot of times people think transfers are quitting. I think certain programs that kid's he's not going to come here afraid to work. But he's going to have an opportunity to play, and I think that's probably why he showed up. He made the move so quickly that there's going to be some opportunities to play. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's it wouldn't surprise me if he's not the last portal transfer as a corner. I mean, we just need some corners, man. I think we're going into next year with Chuck played a lot of snaps at corner. I think Chaz played some last year, and then Lowry. That's it, isn't it?
Pretty much. Marquis Lowry didn't play much this year. He was injured for much of the year. Chester Kimbrough, of course, played in 2021. This year he played nickel in the slot. But, because Williams is gone, and Amir Speed is gone. And,
I mean, that corner spot, man, I'd like to see us bring in some more corners.
And Kari Crump is to be determined. So
right. I mean, in best case, you got him, week 10. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
they're the corner position. Dylan Tatum is coming back. He had to move over there out of necessity, and that's about it. Yeah, they're thin at corner, and they were Ade Willie's around, and the other kid Corey, what's his name? Cole, I forget his name. A couple Floridians or true freshmen that one of which had some injuries this year, so they're still around also. But to your point, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see one more out of the portal. I know this kid Zai Alexander looks great. We talked about him earlier in the show. Michigan State offered him Southeast Louisiana, but there's going to be a lot of schools lining up to get him. I think he's a guy that could come in and go wherever he goes. He could be like an all-conference player at the Power 5 position.
Right.
So we'll wait and see. All right, Ron, I appreciate your input, and we'll be talking to you soon. You take care and have a great rest of your weekend. All right, Ron?
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Go Green.
Thanks a lot. There he goes. Certainly appreciate Ron Armstrong and everything he does, his friendship and all other contributions over at SpartanMag.com. A lot of you guys really like hearing from him, guys and gals, like hearing from him, and I certainly enjoy talking football with him as well. Let's go over here to the comments area and see what's going on. We've got, remember Marlowe came in first. That was impressive. All right. Ben Cheese here from Allegan, Michigan. Eric M. from Roswell, Georgia. Brad Fashenko, Austin, Texas. Mark Galfano from Chicago. Spartan MD, Spartan Legends. Samuel DeJesus says, Jim, who do you think will start in 2023 as Michigan State's quarterback? I'm going to go with Peyton Thorne still, but it is a competition, and they let Peyton Thorne know and all the other quarterbacks know that it is a competition. Doesn't matter what you did last year. Competition starts winter football and into spring practice. Caden Hauser's sticking around to compete as well. Noah Kim, not a bad player. And I guarantee there's some people in the undercurrents talking to Noah Kim, letting him know that if you go in the portal, we'll be very interested. There's no question he's probably hearing that. But Noah Kim might think that he can compete and win this job here. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on. Spartan MD says like and subscribe. I appreciate that. I didn't tell people to give us a thumbs up. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out as well. Go over to SpartanMag.com. $1 and you can become a Spartan Magger through August 31st. Tell us what you think. Noah Sprunger, intern extraordinaire, says, good evening, folks. We appreciate all the work that Noah Sprunger does. Dynamite job for us in the front lines and also behind the scenes. Noah Sprunger is a guy that I rely on a lot to keep me briefed on things. He's amazing with the information he has out there. We love Noah Sprunger. Jason Killip, of course, Paul Konadak, associate editor. Big movie, Ron Armstrong, of course. Ricardo Cooney, we haven't had any stories from him in a while as we've made the move, but that'll be coming soon. And, Matt Dorsey and all the usual suspects at SpartanMag. Appreciate all those guys. Bryce Bailey says, have you heard 2023 will be open competition at quarterback? Yeah, I just mentioned that. Good question, and you're right, it is. That's what I'm hearing. Spartan MD says, JC, do you see any of the players who entered the portal return to be into the Spartan fold? Ron and I have talked about that in the past. Would not shock me, like Ron was mentioning, Michigan State needs some help there at the defensive tackle position. They're in the portal looking at players. Had a visit this weekend from the portal visitor from Florida State. And also, Michigan State is still involved with Dre Butler out of Liberty. Jarrett Jackson is the visitor from Florida State. Those two defensive tackles, Michigan State's still involved with them. Michigan State has lost players into the portal. Of course, Jalen Hunt and Deshaun Mallory. It wouldn't shock me if one of those guys came back. Jalen Hunt, they'd have to iron out a few things. But, just keeping that pilot light lit like we always talked about. But there's no question Jalen Hunt has some horsepower and some ability. And it remains to be seen what those guys can attract in the portal. What level of schools are interested in them. And if it's not to their liking, do they come back like a Connor Hayward? Ben Van Sumeren was a guy that spent some time in the portal. Would not shock me if that happened. Those guys, if you're looking at defensive tackle, Michigan State's in good shape with their top three when you have Harmon and Simeon Barrow, Maverick Hansen. They need a fourth in there. Alex Van Sumeren is in there, but Jalen Hunt could come back in and be a second-string defensive tackle. Have a healthy offseason, could get right in there and get at least 20 snaps a game. Deshaun Mallory, lost that weight and lost strength at the defensive tackle position, was a third stringer. They moved him out to defensive end out of necessity, and he was functional out there. He was reasonably quick. I think Deshaun Mallory is more of a 5 technique defensive end and a 30 front rather than, and you can find 30 fronts out there, I guess, but not all of them need those defensive end types. So if you brought Mallory back, would he have the strength to play defensive tackle at 280? He'd have to address that, the strength factor there, but it wouldn't surprise me if one of those guys comes back. 09 says, broadcast looks great, better camera. No, it's the same camera we've had in the past. But you know what? I did do an update with the app that we use, and I noticed that maybe that you're seeing the cameras better, but when I was running those videos of Isaiah Johnson and Sam Levitt, the video was locking. So I don't know if we're getting better video quality here, but losing it with that type of thing. I would hate to lose that. I'd rather not have great video quality. You guys don't need to see great quality of this mug, that's for sure. I'd rather have access to better video, but I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I'll have to get back in rehearsal mode and test it. I did test those guys, the video before we came on, just maybe 20 minutes before airtime, and the video was locking up then. That's one of the reasons we were late getting started tonight. So it was bothering me that the video was locking up. So when we went live, I went ahead and gave it a try to see if it was still locking up, and it did lock up a little bit, unfortunately. Some more comments here. Noah Sprunger with the link, $1. That's where you click. If you want to become a SpartanMag.com subscriber, give us a click right there. And only $1 through August 31st. Become a Magger and say hello when you get over there. And say thanks to people like Noah Sprunger who's making it happen. Bill Houston says, what do you make of the decommitments of Jonathan Slack and Javon Brown? Mutually parting of ways? With Jonathan Slack, definitely was. I wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Slack ends up junior college bound, and they're wishing him the best. Jonathan Slack, he's 6'3", wasn't the biggest guy. They're trying to, there's a certain size that they like on the offensive line. Slack didn't quite provide that. So even if everything had held together in terms of offseason development and academics and everything, I'm not sure he would have been everything they were looking for there. But that was mutual, but certainly wish him well. Possibly going the JUCO route. Javon Brown, let's wait and see what happens with the linebacker situation. If the Harris twins end up committing to Michigan State in the next 72 hours, then some of the math might stand up there that Michigan State was willing to let him go when he showed interest in possibly visiting elsewhere. But let's wait and see what happens there. Old Tug the Bell Cow coming in from Austin, Texas. Gordon Sonona says, how much will it cost after August 31st? After August 31st, it'll be a monthly charge, similar to everything else in the industry, similar to 24/7 and Rivals.com. I don't know specifically. I don't want to quote it, but it'll be something like that. Jake Zarnick says, good evening, JC. After this month of weak competition, do you see this Michigan State team being a playoff contender this season? After this month of weak competition, do you see Michigan State being a playoff contender this season? After this month of weak competition, I don't know. I don't follow the question. Michigan State being a playoff contender in football, not anytime soon. After this month of weak competition, you're talking football, right? We say playoff. I'm going to say no. Matthew Dorsey says, "Hey Jim, how are you?" I assume that's Matt Dorsey. I'm going to text him to see if that's him. And I've been thinking about getting his input on this recruiting class here in the next couple of days ahead as well, because he's still a very valued observer of Michigan State recruiting. He knows a lot about it. He's very good with player evaluation, and I'd like to tap into his thoughts to see what he thinks as well. I'm just going to make sure that was him. Just want to make sure. You never know. Never know what's going out there. A lot of people want to be Matt Dorsey. So you never know. Brett Burgess says, are we going to start answering questions soon? Brett wants some questions answered. Anthony Capter says, fire Mel Tucker with his Michigan State shirt on. The Mozzie Smith thing, I agree with Ron a little bit. I understand what he's saying about just focusing on Michigan State stuff. I'm not going to get back into the Mozzie Smith stuff, but the prosecutor, I mean, that's just, I mean, everything that you know, when ESPN came after Michigan State and looked into the Travis Walton situation and everything that was going on there and the other basketball players, and they tried to paint a picture of shady prosecuting situations going on. But Dunnings and the prosecutors at East Lansing, they're Michigan people, and they're, say what you want about Dunnings or whatever, but he was giving no favor to athletes back then, and that was well known all through campus that Dunnings was going to come through hard against athletes. As much as ESPN probably hated to uncover that and look into it, but they still painted a certain way. Everything that they wanted to paste on a Michigan State's face, they tried to put that Saddam Hussein mustache on Michigan State's face, so to speak. Everything that ESPN was trying to do with the prosecutors in East Lansing is actually happening in Kangaroo Court, Washtenaw County. That campus is supposed to be very gun unfriendly. The prosecutor is supposed to be very gun unfriendly till it happens to a starting defensive lineman with the prosecutor with his Go Blue pom-poms. You asked about it. I talked about it. I don't know how you can have any other opinion. It's a failure of the American legal system, is it not? I don't know. Nothing against Mozzie Smith. I mean, I'm not going to throw him out with the bathwater on this whole thing. I'm just talking about the prosecutor. And you've seen the things he's posted and tweeted and everything. It's disappointing. Jake Sarnak says, Anthony, do you believe Mel Tucker should be fired just because of the 2022 losing season? I don't think Anthony's post was deleted. Brett Burgess says, will there be love lost? Okay, we already talked about that one. Mark Renaud is an all-time favorite, says Brett Burgess. Mr. Bowman says, this portal is making coaches lazy and these players crybabies. Mr. Bowman, with strong editorial opinion, we respect that. John Elke checking in from Clarkston, Michigan. Marlon Milano says, go green, go white. Mr. Bowman says, Gordon, nope, he's a Republican. Talking about the prosecutor in Washtenaw County. I didn't mean to get into that. I don't like to get into politics, but I don't think he's a Republican. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. You guys don't care what I think about that, and I'm not sure what I think about that. Gordon Sonona says, damn. Charlie Lemon says, Harris twins to MSU, Michigan State. We've talked about that already. You know, they decommitted the same day that Javon Brown decommitted from Michigan State. Michigan State has put a lot of time in with the Harris twins, and now the defensive coordinator at Central Florida is moving on to Arkansas. There's a lot of smoke there. So we'll see what becomes of that. But if that ends up happening and Michigan State gets the Harris twins, that'll help Michigan State in the rankings and it'll help Michigan State in the linebacker room. And I like the Harris twins. I might as well talk about them a little bit. I've talked about them before. I've posted about them before. And Travis Williams is the name of the coach at Central Florida that's going to Arkansas that helps jostle this thing loose just a little bit for Michigan State potentially. And, Michael Harris is a 4-star linebacker, 6'1", 198. He's a 4-star in the on-3 consensus. And what I've written before is you watch Michael Harris for 3 plays, and you know that that's a guy you want to offer if you're at Michigan State. 3 plays, you watch him, yep, we're offering that guy. I don't say that about a lot of players, but I'd say that about him. He's stocky, he's quick, he's physical, he's fast and quick, converges with agility. That's the guy I compared to Danicos Allen a little bit. Michael Harris, 6'1", 198. Like Danicos Allen with probably more burst, maybe not as physical as Danicos, but plenty physical. I mean, Danicos Allen was an excellent wrestler, and he had those long arms, and when he got a hold of you, you were going down. He had arms like grappling hooks, and you saw it with his high school film. I remember that about Danicos Allen. I'm talking to Mike Tressel about him. I'm like, when he gets his hands on you, it's like grappling hooks. He's got you, and you're not getting away. Danicos Allen was special in that way. And Danicos Allen was a great, great college football player. So Michael Harris, I'm not saying I'm not guaranteeing he'll be that good, but that's who he reminds me of. His twin brother, Andrew Harris, 6'2", 190. And I think these guys, their mother was originally from Jamaica and they were new to football. And just excellent athletes. 6'2", 190. Andrew Harris, they're the twin brother, taller, a little more lean. He's a 4-star in the on-3 consensus, number 300 in the country, number 56 in Florida. He's the taller of the two. He's a punishing tackler. Very good at reading the backfield flow, footwork, then shooting the gap. Right now physicality, they're kind of still somewhat new to football, but they've got football IQ, and this guy's got it. Like I was talking about, reading backfield flow and pulling the pin and going. Footwork, read, then 2-step acceleration to get into a gap for a physical tackle. When he makes contact with the ball carrier stops cold or gets knocked back. When Andrew Harris gets into you. He's a downhill linebacker who's also quick and agile, but he's destructive. Well coached. He stays coiled while he's reading backfield flow. Then he explodes in an instant. Good mechanics, good habits. Change of direction is just kind of okay. Not great. If it were great, the guy would be a top 50 national guy. But all those other things are good with Andrew Harris. And the change of direction is just kind of okay, which makes him more of an interior middle linebacker than an edge linebacker. But that's the Harris twins, and there's room for both of them at Michigan State if that ends up happening. They've shown interest, so you assume Michigan State is going after him now. Bo Coleman says definitely need some help in the trenches, especially offensive line. Michigan State's got 2 commitments on the offensive line. They went after Samson Okunlola, who committed to Miami over Michigan State a couple of days ago on the 21st. That was a 5-star guy that Michigan State put a lot of time into in their talks back and forth, ended up going with Michigan State. And that's an NIL deal. Everybody knows it. So there were talks, and Miami ended up with the stronger talking points, so to speak. Some of the numbers you're seeing out there with name, image, and likeness, if you're a coaching staff, do you really want to pile up a bunch of money for an offensive lineman? Offensive linemen end up busting more than any other position. I don't have the exact scientific data on that. It's just my observations over the years that offensive linemen have a higher bust rate than other positions. They also take longer to develop, take longer to gain traction. So I'm just not sure. If you've got a limited amount of money in your collective or whatever for name, image, and likeness, I'm not sure offensive line is where you want to be piling up that money. Now, Miami has a lot of name, image, and likeness all over the place. What's the guy's name? Ruiz? Big-time billionaire, donor. He's got all the money. He's putting it out there, among other people, but he's behind a lot of it. And so he's all for it. And Miami is a very, very, very desperate fan base. They had great success, of course, in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, and they want badly to get back to where they're running and ruling college football. And they're putting that money. It's a new game. It's a new shooting match now with name, image, and likeness, and they got a guy who's willing to bankroll some of those things. You put the two together, and they're aggressive in those areas. Now, can they turn talent into winning football teams remains to be seen. The whole formula with name, image, and likeness is interesting. How much of that do you want in your locker room? You're going to have some because that's the way the game is nowadays. How do you manage it? I don't know. there were some indications that the University of Tennessee had some problems in their locker room after they lost a game or so with some players who have a lot of money with name, image, and likeness and those that don't, and some hurt feelings that way. So managing that's going to be interesting. But it's also interesting to see some of these high school quarterbacks, some of them, the money that we hear that they are commanding, and that's what they're worth. You're worth what someone is willing to pay you. And these quarterbacks, hey, if you're playing quarterback for a top 10 college football team, you're producing a very sought after, valuable set of goods and services for a football team that, college football teams, what are they? If the University of Tennessee's football team were for sale right now, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, what would it be worth? I don't know, $500, $600, $700 million, just the football team. I don't know. And the quarterback's doing that it's worth money. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of fans to see that with the NIL, you're seeing the commitment game has changed. There's been decommitments for a number of years, and that's taken some getting used to. But with some of these become just flat out free agency situations, you're seeing some fans over on SpartanMag.com Underground Bunker, they're not real comfortable with it. Because that's been part of the allure and attraction of college football, is that players from all over the country, for whatever reason, if they come to your school, they saw something in your school that probably makes you proud of your school. They visited, they liked it, they liked the coaches, facilities, the campus, the academic tours used to mean something. And as a football fan, that's something that you would connect with more so than just drafting a player as it is in the NFL. So is that going to be less of something for some fans? Less attractive to them? I think that there will be some. I said that from the beginning when the transfer portal and the NIL came in, that college football fans will lose a percentage of their fans. Now, will they gain fans in the other part of it? Maybe so. I don't know. Can't prove this, but I also think that the uncomfortable nature with name, image, and likeness for some fans, I think it's gonna be more uncomfortable in the Big Ten region than it is down south. I think down south they'll be like, I don't even bat an eye about it. I might be wrong about that, but that's my guess on that. You're talking about offensive line recruiting. Keyshawn Blackstock visited Michigan State recently, 6'4", 290, Coffeyville Community College, originally from Newton, Georgia. South Carolina offered, Florida State official visit. Penn State's around there as well. Hearing that Michigan State is in good shape with him, but those things can change. We had heard that Michigan State was in really good shape with Kedrick Riscano. And then, hey, whoever has the chalk last, turned out Ole Miss had the chalk last. They got him. And Riscano's good. He's 4-star. Where's he ranked now? But Riscano, good balance. In terms of home run speed, he just kind of has just okay speed, Riscano. And I looked at some of the other running backs. There was this one kid from Georgia. I've forgotten his name already, but there was one guy that could really stop and start on a dime that I thought that his skills were a little bit better translate to the college level, but Michigan State didn't go after him either. But in terms of academics, the guy that they got from UConn today, Nate Carter, they did talk academics and they were serious about it. Nate Carter was National Honor Society in high school out of Rochester, New York, and he was slated to graduate next fall at UConn. So when he was on campus this weekend, they definitely did talk academics. So it's not that academics is not discussed anymore at all. It is discussed. And Michigan State's got a strong presentation for those situations. But Keyshawn Blackstock's a guy, junior college guy, Michigan State's in on him. Charlie Simons was a guy that Michigan State was interested in, decommitted from North Carolina State recently. He visited Stanford this weekend. It looks like the ship has probably sailed with that one. Defensive tackle, Jared Jackson, Florida State transfer. He was in this weekend, 6'6", 300, Riviera Beach, Florida, redshirt junior. He's had an interesting career thus far. He's kind of a 3-star guy, went to Louisville, had 16 tackles as a true freshman, 3 tackles for loss. The next year sat out as a transfer. Then in 2020, only played 1 game for Florida State during the COVID season. Then 2021, played in 10 games with the Seminoles, 16 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. Not great, not bad. 2022, this year, played in 11 games, 12 tackles. Had 5 tackles against North Carolina State. I might take a look at that game tonight if I have a chance. But Miami Hurricanes are serious about Jarrett Jackson. I talked to some sources at Miami about him, and they think that he'd be a take if he wants to go to Michigan State. And he said flat out, Jarrett Jackson said the Hurricanes were leading prior to his visit to Michigan State. It's a Florida guy that's on campus this weekend. There was some snowfall on Saturday. Did he get a kick out of that? I don't know. But Rutgers is in there, SMU's in there, Miami's in there. So that's one defensive tackle. The other defensive tackle, Dre Butler, 6'5", 300 from Liberty, originally from Covington, Georgia. He was a second-team all-conference guy in junior college at Independence Junior College. Then he went to Auburn in 2020 and 2021. Then he transferred to Liberty. This year at Liberty, he played 283 snaps, had 1 sack, 4 quarterback hurries, 11 solo tackles. So 283 snaps, that's not as many as Maverick Hansen. Maverick Hansen this year is a second stringer for Michigan State, had 380 snaps with 5 quarterback hurries. This guy had 4 quarterback hurries against a lesser schedule. But Michigan State's in on him, Dre Butler and Jarrett Jackson. They need some depth there. Are either of those guys difference-making transfer portal defensive tackles? Based on those numbers, I'm thinking probably not, but I want to look at their film a little bit. But you need these are guys that help your bottom 40, and this is a program that needs some help in the bottom 40. So, Michigan State's got room for 22. If Melvin is a 17th guy, 18 and 19 offensive linemen, defensive tackles, a couple of linebackers, and that would eat up those scholarships right there. If you have 22, maybe 1 left over, 1 or 2 for the portal. And, in the past, Mel Tucker has said he always likes to leave 1 or 2 open for the portal as you get into the winter and into the spring. That's probably what this is about. They got room for 22. If there's 3 more that leave the program, there's still room for more portal later on. Let's get over here. I know Noah Sprunger's been watching. I'm going to send him a note to tell him he can call in if he has time. And we'll see if he's got any other thoughts about recruiting at this point and who else is out there for Michigan State. All right. Go over here to in the meantime now, let's go over to the mailbag once again. Where did we leave off? That film, we were talking about Levitt a little bit, the quarterback. Let me see if I can get this film running again. And some of you may have seen Conan Dyke's story and the quotes that Levitt's high school coach had. They were amazing. I mean, just very insightful quotes, not your run-of-the-mill quotes. He talked about this one from the end zone level. This is an amazing throw from about the 35-yard line. Let me... Where he's deciding to make this throw right here. It's going to be a deep dig, and it's into double coverage. You got it. 25 dropping. So the ball's already coming out. And this is what the coach said about when he makes the decision to throw it. He makes the decision to throw right now. Maybe he didn't see the underneath thrower or defender. I don't know. He throws it from 35 yards. That ball doesn't get more than 12 yards off the field, it looks like. Double coverage. Pinpoint. Now, you might say he's taking a risk there. Maybe not even a smart throw. But again, 44 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. He's making throws like that all year. We're getting choppy here again. I might as well just shut it down. But you see him throwing off the wrong foot and throwing a guy open, throwing it in the green area, which is kind of a Steve Spurrier concept. I'm going to have to shut it down because it's just not working. Disappointing that they couldn't get the video. I'll have to work on that, see if we can incorporate a little bit more of that in the future, especially by Wednesday with signing day coming around. Now, so sorry, Sol. I know you wanted me to break down some of the recent commitments a little bit. Now, as far as other recent commitments, we didn't get a chance to talk about the tight end from Boise State. Tyneal, what's his last name? Anyway, he's 6'2", 250. And a guy that, he was the number 2 tight end for Boise State. Again, Michigan State needs some help at tight end in terms of they need some veteran. Tyneil Hopper's his name, 6'2", 250. In 3 years at Boise State, 22 catches, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's in 23 games. I've not looked at film of him yet. 6'2" is not great size, but he's in the portal, guy that's got some experience. They're bringing in Jalen Franklin from Wisconsin also, kind of a third-string guy from Wisconsin as a walk-on. So Michigan State, they lose 2 tight ends this year, Daniel Barker, Tyler Hunt. Malik Carr is going to try to rise up to become more and more of an all-around tight end. But you have Malik Carr and a bunch of young guys. Jack Nickel redshirted this year. Masunis redshirted this year. Saw Nickel last spring, and he looked pretty lean and pretty thin, looked like a teenager that needs to put on some mass. So you have those 2 guys coming in. Brendan Parachek's coming in from Dexter. Really like him all around as a tight end. Hands, frame, blocking, all of it. Parachek, bona fide 4-star. But to expect immediate, contributions from Parachek, maybe. But down in and down out, game in and game out, there's a lot of wear and tear to do all those things at this level. So that's why there's some, that's why you bring in Franklin, a veteran frame. You bring in Tyneil Hopper, a veteran frame, a guy who's been on the field. So you bring those guys in, they're senior type guys. They can help Carr, and then if the freshmen beat them out, that's great. But it gives you some experience depth there. Now the negative is they've not been part of the program. Mel Tucker talks about the importance of the process, understanding the standard. It takes what it takes, all those things, and it's easier to get that from players when you've had them for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I got to believe it's harder to do it when you're bringing them in for 1 year, or 6 months, 3 months, whatever the case may be. Kenneth Walker was a unicorn. Daniel Barker comes in. How much of the process did he truly understand when he came in with a lot of talent, but week in and week out, it was kind of hard to know what you were going to get from him. Would he have been a better player if he'd have been in the process for 4 years? Yes. I think all coaches would say that. So Michigan State is still, they're still putting Band-Aids on things a little bit. Tight end position, they've had a chance to recruit some tight ends and bring them along. But, they've got one walk-on from the transfer portal and this guy coming in from Boise State, lateral moves, type of second-string type of guys. That's the way it looks to me. If you disagree with me, let me know. But that's not ideal when you're trying to build what they're trying to build. So that they're doing what they can in the meantime. But to get that bottom 40 as strong as you need it to be, building, having guys come up from the bottom is the way it's got to be done. I would think in today's world of the transfer portal, it's probably going to become harder and harder to bring those third stringers along and keep them patient after a redshirt year, and then the redshirt year on the scout team as a third stringer, and then as a third year redshirt sophomore, telling them now, you're on target to compete in the 2 deep now. That's what a strong program has, keeping those guys with talent, that patient. It's easy for me to sit here in this chair and say that's the way it needs to be done, but it's just becoming it's becoming harder to keep those people happy and satisfied. But the great coaches and the great programs, they're going to get that done. So other recent commitments, Nate Carter, talked about him a little bit. Remind me of Mark Renaud a little bit. One thing about Nate Carter, good vision, really good job setting up blocks. When I watched him today against Wyoming. I watched him against a little bit against Michigan when he hurt his shoulder. He only had 6 carries that day. Utah State, he had like 190 yards against Utah State. Had a 50-yarder and was tackled from behind on that one. Had like a 20-yarder and he was stripped from behind on that one. So he's got good speed, and good vision, and does a good job. Like if he's got a tight end out there ready to block a linebacker, he does a good job briefly pointing this way to get the linebacker out this way because he knows the tight end's got an angle here, out this way to come back in to set up blocks. Does a good job vision and setting up blocks. And when he cuts, he's kind of a 2-step cutter. He's not, I'm still looking at it. I'm not Gil Brandt when it comes to evaluating people, but I like those guys that can cut on 1 foot. And the quarterback, Sam Levitt, can cut on 1 foot. That's one of the things that made Drew Stanton a good runner. Cut on 1 foot. He wasn't great speed, but he just changed directions on people. Kenneth Walker, one of the greatest ones we've ever seen around here. Just the leg strength, 1 foot to cut. 1 foot to cut. With the kid coming in from UConn, it's 2 steps, which is not terrible. We'll see. I'm still doing evaluation on those things, but he's, of course he's not terrible, but it might not be like completely ideal. He's solid. I compare him to, talent-wise, reminds me of Elijah Collins a little bit. A guy that'll help with depth. Does he come in and become a difference maker? Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I'm not sure. But he's got some work to do, and they're happy to have him. Good kid, great teammate. His teammates rave about him. Jim Mora, the head coach at UConn, wishes him luck on social media. They obviously think the world of him. He wants to go to a bigger stage and play at Michigan State. Excuse me. As far as we've talked about additional scholarship slots that are out there. The 2 linebackers, Michigan State's interested in them. Keyshawn Blackstock, the offensive lineman, and the 2 defensive tackles, one from Florida State, one from Liberty. And the wide receiver, Jalen Smith, who visited a few weeks ago, and now there's a lot of indications that Michigan State is heating that one up again as well. All right, what do we have here? Some more questions. Amos from Parts Unknown says, any defensive tackles that Michigan State has a shot of getting or flipping? I talked about Dre Butler and Jared Jackson, a couple guys from the transfer portal. As far as guys that are committed elsewhere, I've not heard any indications of that. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, hi, Jim. Are you expecting any changes to Mel Tucker's staff? Also was wondering if you heard any reasons why Jeremy Bernard entered the portal. Was he just homesick? Homesickness probably part of it. As the season went along, Jeremy Bernard was only getting maybe 5 snaps a game, so that didn't help. Just calling it, that's the way it is these days. You get a 4-star on your team from 3,000 miles from home, and he's only getting a couple snaps per game. This can happen. He had been committed to Washington previously, and I think all the way up to January. I'm not sure if he was an early signee last year. He might have been a late signee. But after Kalen DeBoer was hired at Washington, they tried to keep him. They talked to him, so he knew them a little bit. He decided to go away from home, go to Michigan State. Michigan State was a hot program at the time. Now Washington goes out and goes, 9-3? Had a great season. You have Michael Penix coming back. And what Kalen DeBoer did on offense, going back home to play for them, Michael Penix could be the best quarterback in college football next year. So all those things, not shocked. But that one hurt. Some of the players that have gone into the portal, I don't think it's a net negative. That one is a net negative. That's the way the game is these days. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's no big deal. That was a big deal. Question 6. Adam from Grand Rapids says, why did more schools not go after Sam Leavitt? He says, from my untrained eye, it seems as if he is as talented as any quarterback in the class. I don't put stock into the competition he was playing. The throws he made displayed some serious arm talent. I'd agree with that. I mean, ability to process, foot quickness, arm talent, zip, and the touch that he puts on it, throwing people open into the green area. Sam Leavitt is different, and I'll be intrigued to see what becomes of him at the college level, because the high school film for Sam Leavitt is different. It's uncommon. Doesn't guarantee he's going to be great, but it's uncommon. I was looking at the quarterback rankings. Now, you have to understand with quarterback recruiting, most teams only have room for one quarterback. Some teams don't take any, but it's the position. It's harder to get a scholarship offer at the quarterback position than any other position. I've seen some really good high school quarterbacks have to settle, quote unquote, to go to Grand Valley or to the MAC and so forth, because there's only 50 kids a year, 60 kids a year that get major college scholarship offers at that position. And you're looking at the top. So Sam Leavitt on 3 ranks him the number 10 quarterback in their rankings, but in the overall on 3 consensus rankings, he's number 29. So number 30 is committed to Texas Tech. 31 is committed to UCLA. 33 is committed to Arizona State, 34 to Boston College, 35 to Syracuse, 36 to Virginia Tech, 37 to Miami, 38 to Utah, 39 to Colorado. And then you get into Illinois. So, 30 is kind of the Mendoza line into those middle tier programs. Sam Levitt, number 29 in the On3 consensus, but number 10 in the On3, their own rankings. See, there's two different rankings at On3. On3 does their own rankings, and they've got their consensus rankings, which is a combination of On3, Rivals.com, 24/7. I don't think they include ESPN. The quarterbacks ahead of them, 27 is going to North Carolina, 26 going to Florida State, 25 is going to Oklahoma State, 24, it's Brady Drogosh from Warren De La Salle is going to Cincinnati. That was an interesting one. Brady did some good things for Warren De La Salle. Really good team, good player. For him, his arm circle, his release looks a little long. I'll probably have to shorten that down. 23 is going to Mississippi State. Wait to see what happened with Mike Leach. We're all going to miss him, but that's a good quarterback from Tennessee, a 4-star that was going to go to Mississippi State to run the air raid. 22 is going to Stanford. 21 is going to Arizona. 20 is going to Arkansas. 18 is going to Ole Miss. 17 is going to Oregon State. 16 is going to Louisville, 15 is going to Ohio State, 14 is going to LSU, 13 is going to Notre Dame. My point is these are all name brand programs for the most part, just like Michigan State. Some of these are name brand plus, but they all get one quarterback. Alabama has 2 quarterbacks in the top 15. Other than that, you each get one. So why weren't there more schools in on Sam Levitt? Because I just listed a bunch of them that already had quarterbacks at this stage. So why didn't they come in and try to flip him? Good question. But I agree with you. I think his film was good, and I think Michigan State did well to say, man, we can get on that guy. Bring him in, let him compete. Meanwhile, can Michigan State keep all their other quarterbacks? They've done a good job thus far keeping quarterbacks. And they've done a good job, with the communication internally so that quarterbacks don't get turned off and look to leave. By the way, Helmets took it to Hampton Fay, didn't win the quarterback derby, but was willing to do the tight end thing. And that's a guy that played wide receiver as a sophomore. He's got a big frame, runs well. I mean, if he gets in the weight room, I think he could do it. Quarterbacks, when they change position, back in the old days, they often changed to safety. But now, safety, you got to be able to run real well. And most failed quarterbacks, so to speak, can't run like a safety. Sometimes they become linebackers in the old days. I don't know if that works either. But tight end is a position, if you've got the frame that it can service itself at the tight end position. I think Hampton Fay is a guy that can do that. And he hosted somebody for a recruiting visit lately. And you don't ask somebody to be a visit host unless you know that guy is gung-ho for the program. So Hampton Fay comes in as a quarterback from Texas, and apparently by all indications, he's embraced the position change, and he's embracing the program. So credit to Hampton Fay if you're a Michigan State fan, I would think. Question 7, Jim from Temecula, California says, does anyone else find it strange that Michigan's recruiting seems to be down so far in 2023? Michigan's currently ranked number 22 in the country. The recruiting class, 0 5-stars, 6 4-stars, 13 3-stars. He says, I know it's early, but that's as low as I can remember under Harbaugh. Seems strange with this year and what they had in the year they had last year, obviously this season, that they're having this type of recruiting season. I would agree with that. I'm not sure Harbaugh was totally gangbusters in recruiting the last few years. Credit to him for keeping that program together. I've said it many times that during the COVID year when they played Wisconsin, that team had quit on him. And they were smart, connivingly smart, disingenuous, I suspect, that they got out of the Iowa game and they got out of the Ohio State game. What did Michigan go? They were 2-4. They were going to lose those games ugly. They were going to go 2-6, and he might not have survived. So he was smart to duck out of those games. But I still didn't think that, based on the way the team quit on him that year, I was flabbergasted that they played as well as they did last year. This year, I'm not surprised that they've won every game. I'm not surprised they beat Ohio State. Going into the game, I wasn't surprised. I've been talking about Ohio State. Before that game, I was saying on the message board, people were like, man, Ohio State's going to show it to them this year. I'm like, don't be so sure. So they beat an Ohio State team. Remains to be seen what Ohio State can do against Georgia. But Michigan's done, they had a real good season against a very manageable schedule. But to their credit, he turned it around. That thing was going down the tubes. I've never seen a coach, lose a team and then recover it like that. And they had physicality last year with good leadership, had some graduations, and they maintained good leadership and physicality. So in this era of transfer portals and NIL, they've gotten team football going with physicality. And I give credit also that when he was under the gun and on the hot seat, thin ice, whatever analogy you want to use, he reversed field, and it seemed to me he said, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out my way, which was with the run game, physicality. You know, a couple years there with Josh Gaddis, they were about speed and space and all that stuff. Didn't work out very well. I don't think he's a speed and space guy, so I think he was like back against the wall and says, if I'm going out, I'm going out my way. I respect him for that. I don't respect him for anything else. All right, so as far as the recruiting rankings go right now, Rivals.com, Michigan State is number 3 in star average, number 19 in the country. Ohio State's number 1, Penn State's 14. Michigan is below Michigan State in star average on the Rivals.com rankings. The overall Rivals.com points, Penn State's number 14. Ohio State is the best in the Big Ten, number 3 overall. Penn State's second, they're number 14. Michigan's third, number 19. Iowa's fourth, number 23 with 20 commitments. Key figure there, Rivals.com rankings. Illinois is number 5, number 36 in the country, 21 commitments. Number 6, Northwestern, number 37 in the country. Next is Maryland, 44 in the country. Then Michigan State's 45. Now, Maryland has 23 commitments at 44 in the country. Michigan State's 45 in the country with 13 commitments. The reason I mentioned 20 commitments, Iowa is, 4th in the Big Ten in the Rivals.com rankings. They've got 20 commitments. The way the Rivals.com formula works, as soon as you get to your 20th commitment, it's not that you get bonus points, but you're not docked negative points. And I think they've described it in the past. And, Mike Farrell's talked about it. He's not with them anymore. But basically, when the formula was put together, I mentioned back then that I didn't think it was good because I just didn't think it was accurate, because back then Mark D'Antonio was having a lot of recruiting classes with only 17 recruits because they had such little attrition. And I think that their system doesn't reward programs with less attrition, because anything below 20 scholarship, 20 commitments, it kind of hurts your class until you get to 20, and then you're okay. So I don't know, maybe they'll change it. I'm not sure. Again, like I said, I've got a lot of respect for them. We enjoyed our time with them, but that's just, I'm trying to help you make sense of how those rankings work. But if the star average, you click on that, Michigan State's number 19 in the country, number 3 in the Big Ten. Now, with On3, Michigan State's number 21 in the country. That was before the latest decommitment. So throw it all together. I think Michigan State, if they get Blackstock and they get let's say they get the 2 Harris twins, I think they'll have a top 20 class. And that doesn't guarantee anything. I think Michigan State needs to fill all the way up to 25, whether it be with portal or not. Right now they've got, 2 guys in the transfer portal that are scholarship guys. Maybe Melvin's a third one. If you add 4 more, you're bringing in 7. That's comfortable. I don't think it would have been wise for Michigan State to go crazy and bring in 15 or 20 like Ole Miss did last year. Michigan State did a couple years ago. They need to start building from below more. And, anywhere between 5 to 7, I'm just thinking might be about the sweet spot that you want if you're getting proper player development from within, from the younger ranks. I've always said, recruiting rankings, a top 10 class does mean something. A top 5 class does mean something. If you want to win a national championship, you have to have classes that ranked in the top 10. That's been well documented in the last 10 years. Top 10 means something. If you have a bunch of top 10 classes, it doesn't guarantee you're going to be great. Look at A&M. A&M's had some bad coaching. They had bad football teams, right? So you can have good players and still screw it up. But if you want to win a national championship, you have to be in that category. Michigan State's not in that category. Top 10 means something. Top 15 means something. Top 20 means something. When you get outside of the top 20, I've said for years, and I still believe this, classes that rank between 25 and 45, I can't really tell them apart. I can't look at a class that's ranked number 28 and one that's ranked 33, and I don't see much of a difference. Just like in preseason rankings, when you pick up your football preseason magazine, Lindy, Street and Smith, Athlons, whatever, you're looking at it in August, and let's say Michigan State is ranked number 24 in the country, and then you see that Wisconsin is 31 in the country. Does that mean anything? Is that always 100% accurate? No. And that's based on more known commodities as those players are. So no one's doing backflips between preseason 25 and preseason 31. It's throw them in a hat, roll the Yahtzee cup. It's the same thing. Over the years, I've felt that way between recruiting classes ranked 25 to 45. Throw them all under a blanket. They're about the same thing, in my opinion. And I think Michigan State has a chance to be in, that top 20, depending on how they finish, or they could get into, that 25 to 45. They're not going to sink outside of the top 35, I don't think. You don't want to be outside of the top 45. You don't want to have a recruiting class that's ranked number 61. I've never seen that work out well for Michigan State. Maybe that works out well for Utah or somebody, or Air Force, I don't know. But you don't want to be there. You definitely don't want to be there like 2 straight classes or 2 out of 3 classes. So Michigan State's not going to be there. Are they going to have a top 15 type of class like was possible in the middle of summer? Probably not. That was possible. If they would have went 10-2 this year, I think probably they might have been able to do that. So that's where I am on all that stuff. To answer your question. Ronnie M. from Gross Eel says, he says, to what do you, where are we? It says, to what do you attribute the hockey program's quick turnaround? All right, well, so Michigan State hockey, they got the GLI coming up not this week, but the week after in Grand Rapids this year. They play Ferris State on Wednesday, and if the second game they either play Michigan Tech or Western Michigan, all 4 teams have winning records. GLI is pretty solid this year. Michigan State's 12-7-1. They've lost 3 of their last 4. Split with Michigan, lost 2 to a very good Minnesota team, but 12-7-1. Michigan State number 8 in the country in the pairwise rankings. Pairwise rankings is it in college hockey. That's what it's all about. So why is Michigan State good? I'm gonna have to have a sit down with Adam Nightingale and go over some of this, because what do they have? I should have counted it up. They've got 11 or 12 new faces in the 18 that skate every night. Transfer portal, they hit Clarkson, Brown, RPI, Lake Superior State. It's Muka from Lake Superior State, from Slovakia, I think. He's captain, transfer portal captain. He's 25 years old, doing a solid job. So it's a good mix of transfer portal guys and some of the holdovers and freshmen, obviously. But the top line, Jagger Joshua, who I think was in the portal and then came back. The Krieger brothers were in the portal. They came back. And those guys are playing a little different style. You see the Krieger brothers carrying the puck more. You see other guys carrying the puck more rather than, the style is different. It's more up-tempo. And the pass is coming out of their own zone, just very sharp. Nightingale said, if we're going to play up-tempo, we have to have great conditioning. And he said something that's very similar to Tom Izzo. A lot of guys think they want to play flow and go, fast, up-paced hockey until you're asked to actually put in the work to have the conditioning to do it properly. And the conditioning's been good enough to do that, and the evaluation, not only the transfers that came in, but internally also, and the freshmen. The top line, Jagger Joshua, rugged guy. The top line, it's 2 freshmen and Jagger Joshua. And the freshmen, Daniel Russell, his dad played at Michigan State back in the 90s. Kerry Russell, Traverse City guy. Okay, Michigan State had an inside track with him. I'd have to go back and see what happened to this recruitment, how Michigan State got in on him. I don't know, but Carson Dorwart's the center for that group. Freshman, very productive. I think he had a 4-goal game this year. Dorwart and Russell were teammates last year in juniors. And Dorwart is like a classic late bloomer, they say, but some evaluation needed to take place to bring that guy in, and he's a top-line guy as a freshman with Joshua and Russell. Russell and Dorwart were teammates last year. You bring them both in. One was probably a recruiting victory, but they had an edge because he's a legacy. The other guy was pure evaluation. He's top-line center. So it's all of it, conditioning, evaluation, style. And they're it's been pretty good. And, they have the goalie from Quinnipiac, St. Cyr, originally from Notre Dame, went to Quinnipiac, 6th-year senior. His mother was Manon Rhéaume. You might remember Manon Rhéaume. She was the female goalie that played a game in minor leagues, or not the minor leagues, played a game in the NHL in an exhibition season. St. Cyr, Dylan St. Cyr, that's his mother. And he's a little guy, but that's a big-time transfer portal guy. So it's portal, system, conditioning, all of it. And they've been one of the big stories in the country for college hockey. They had big crowds for the Michigan game, 2 big crowds for the Minnesota game. We'll see what happens with GLI. You know, I was in Grand Rapids back in 2007 when Michigan State played there in the NCAA regionals. They played Boston University in the Sweet 16, and then they beat Notre Dame, upset Notre Dame in the quarterfinals in order to go to the Frozen Four and end up winning the national title that year. The crowd was, you know, it was about 2/3 full for those. It's my understanding in Grand Rapids there's not been a lot of publicity for it. In the past, the GLI was really publicized in the Detroit area back in the heyday because Olympia Entertainment owned it. And, you know, Joe Louis Arena, College Hockey of the Joe. Remember when they used to promote the heck out of that? Billboards, commercials and so forth. And then you have commercials on when you watched Red Wings games, they would promote the GLI. Back in the old days in the 80s, you remember the GLI would be sold out and the CCHA tournament would be sold out for the championship game. Michigan and Michigan State had a lot to do with that. Michigan's not in the GLI anymore. So you don't have Olympia Entertainment with the promotions during Red Wings games. Michigan Tech University basically owns the GLI. So I'm not sure what their advertising budget is, probably very minimal. People that I talked to in Grand Rapids, they were not even aware that it's going on there. So it's going to be a struggle to get the word out there. Can they start slow and make it an annual thing and maybe put 5 years in and see where they are at that point? Maybe so. Western Michigan was very good at college hockey last year. They're pretty good this year, too. They're over 500. So is Western. So is Ferris. So is Michigan Tech. They're all good. Ferris State was not so good last year. They're good this year. Western was very good last year. Western was top 10 most of the season. They had a legit chance to go to the Frozen Four and even win a national title. Then they got knocked out by Minnesota in the round of 8. I went and watched Western play against North Dakota last year at Lawson, and it was packed. So there's Western fans out there that are hockey fans that love a chance to beat Michigan State. So we'll see if they come out if they play Michigan State in the second game. I don't know, but I probably shouldn't be talking that much about hockey. I might be losing some of you guys, but some of you guys are happy with it, and you know who you are. But it's fun to be around campus and to get to hear some of the Michigan State, some of the buzz around college hockey, and it certainly happened when Minnesota was in town and for the game against Michigan last weekend. Now Michigan State only has like 5 home games remaining, believe it or not. All right, John Don S. from Parts Unknown says, what commitment in this class has the best chance to make an early impact? So we get asked this question a lot. Most likely to make impacts are going to be wide receivers and DBs, right? Jeremy Bernard was a good player. What do you have, 5 or 10 catches this year? So is that an impact? Which true freshman this year made impacts? Look at last year's recruiting class. I know it's a fun thing to talk about, but in actuality, it's a difficult thing to achieve. Jeremy Bernard, I don't know what he had, 5 or 10 catches or whatever. Caleb Coley was a guy I was trying to think of earlier. Hurt a little bit this year. He'll be in the corner picture this year. Zion Young had an impact out of necessity because of all the injuries and attrition at the defensive end position. So Zion Young was one. Malcolm Jones was injured a little bit. James Schott didn't play. Dylan Tatum had to come in and play out of necessity. Jaden Magnum had to come in and play out of necessity. Van Zoomer played a little bit, then not much. Antonio Gates traveled to Penn State, but didn't get on the field. A lot of talent there, but need to get him with the program. Chase Carter played early, went in the portal. Jack Nickel, nothing. Ade Willie, not yet. Caden Hauser, not yet. Jack Stone, not so much. Jaron Glover got on the field a little bit, but not so much. Michael Masunas, tight end, transferred. Braden Miller, offensive line, redshirt. Quavion Carter, linebacker, injured all year. Malik Spencer played at the end of the year after being injured a little bit. Ashton Lepo, redshirt offensive lineman. Terrell Henry, return game, a little bit at wide receiver, a little bit. Gavin Brocious, offensive line, redshirt. Christian Phillips, offensive line, defensive line, redshirt. So if there was ever a year when defensive players had a chance to make some noise at Michigan State, it was this year with all the injuries. But it was, Dylan Tatum a little bit. Jaden Mangum started a couple times. So Tatum, Mangum, Malik Spencer, defensive backs, they were the 3 that had an impact, and it was due to injuries, right? And Zion Young. So more than usual, right? So maybe this year's class didn't quite drive home that point, but they're excited about those defensive backs, that's for sure. So defensive backs and wide receivers this year. Sean Brown, they need some help at corner. Is he a true corner? Have to wait and see. I really like Stanton Ramil, the offensive lineman from Alabama. I think he looks like a college player right now. Looked really good in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game practices. Jordan Hall, linebacker. I don't know if there's, if Jacoby Windman comes back, which looks like now, if he's not turned pro already, there's a good chance Jacoby Windman comes back. There's a better chance each day that he doesn't announce that he comes back. Jacoby Windman is a thoughtful person, a principled person, and he's the type of person that will listen to Mel Tucker if Mel Tucker tells him you need to come back. I think Mel Tucker told Shakura Brown that he needed to come back, and Shakura Brown went and didn't get drafted, and Tucker was like, if you came back and improved your 40 time, we could have gotten you drafted, had a better chance. It didn't happen, but Jacoby Windman, if he's had those talks with Tucker, and Tucker's called around to the general managers around the National Football League and done his own evaluation on it, would not shock me, if that all made sense to Jacoby Windman. Stay, try to get an NIL deal, and work on your craft. So if Windman is back, Halliday's back, is Nate Ote back? Possibly. He's been in the portal before, didn't play as much this year as he wanted to. So if those guys are back, it becomes harder. Jordan Hall is a good, interesting player, but it could become harder for him to make immediate impact. We're talking immediate impact right now. So linebacker could be harder if those guys all are back. And if you're a Michigan State fan, you want them back. Windman, Halliday, and Brule was the other guys forgetting. And Nate Ote. So if those four come back, those four be hard to get in there, even if as good as Jordan Hall possibly is. Chance Rucker. I think Chance Rucker's a guy that can play early, corner, good ability. And he plays a position of need and a position in which freshmen make early contributions. Chance Rucker is listed at 6'2", 175 from Denton, Texas, Ryan High School, ranked number 28 player in Texas. He's a 4-star. Michigan State offered him 13 months ago. He had offers from, a lot of places, Florida, LSU, Texas A&M, a few. Michigan State did well to get down. That's a guy that if Chance Rucker were not committed right now, we'd be following him around. That'd be a huge recruitment right now. And that went quietly. There's been no movement there. No indications that he might be getting antsy. I mean, he visited Michigan State last January, official visit in June. And he did schedule an official. He scheduled an official visit to Nebraska, but that was in the summer. But this guy's ability, real nice acceleration at 6'2", balance. Had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns as an up man in the kickoff return team. Sustained smooth speed, and can really turn his hips too. He's not just a straight line guy. He can move his hips, change direction. As a big corner in press coverage at the high school level, very good high school level in Texas. He's got the hips. I'm talking about Chance Rucker here, 4-star for Texas corner. Can turn his hips, change direction. And his team played a lot of press coverage with him to the short side. Used long arms to execute off-hand jam really well. And he's advanced in that technique for a high school player with plus size. You don't see big corners that do the things that he's asked to do at the high school level. Very quick and off coverage too, breaking on the ball. His footwork. There was one play on his video, his highlight film, where a really good wide receiver did a real good, tricky double move. And he was breaking on the first fake and then changed direction, covering the deep ball for a pass breakup. And he didn't have to go into a speed move to do it, didn't panic. He just changed direction on the double move and covered it. He had the speed to do it. The wide receiver ran a real good route, and Rucker was on it like a boss, with length, feet, agile, quick, and fast. So Chance Rucker is a guy that I think can play early for Michigan State and make an immediate impact. Eddie Pleasant, probably in that category as well. Those guys are going to be competing. They'll be competing with Ade Willie and Corey. Cole Corey. I always want to call him Cole Corey. Cole Corey was the guy from Howell, right? I forget this guy's name, but he didn't play all year. Eddie Pleasant, he's put together real well. Physical as a tackler, physical in getting off of blocks. He's comfortable playing press also at the high school level in Florida. Does a good job leveraging the ball and leveraging blocks with technique, physicality, and IQ. He does that against the run real well. Good short area quickness. Not sure with Eddie Pleasant about next gear speed. I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but I've not seen it on film. And didn't really get a good look at his deep ball judgment either on his huddle film. But Eddie Pleasant, I think Rucker might be a little bit further along. So I think those guys. Wide receiver with Jeremy Bernard moving on. Could someone like Isaiah Johnson get in there and make some noise? Possibly so. I like Isaiah Johnson. All right. This one is from Desert Sparty from Ahwatukee. What is Ahwatukee? I gotta look that one up. Sounds like that might be a nickname for some place. No, that's in Phoenix, right? I guess. Let me see. Yeah, it's in Arizona, Ahwatukee. It's in the foothills. All right. Yeah, desert. That makes sense. It's a suburb of Phoenix. Gotcha. All right. So new subscriber, Desert Sparty. He's not the first Desert Sparty. We had a different Desert Sparty that was a former commitment subscriber. So this one from Ahwatukee in Arizona is taking Desert Sparty's name, I think. He says, new subscriber here. Hey, we're glad to have you. Subscribe to SpartanMag.com. In the meantime, those of you that are just tuning in, give us a like and subscribe to this channel. Go over to SpartanMag.com, pay $1. You got it through August. We need you over there. Ahwatukee says, enjoying all of your and your team's content. What are your thoughts on how the basketball team does in terms of the overall record in conference play? I've not looked at their schedule and gone win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. I think the Big Ten has rebounded a little bit here in the last couple of weeks with some good performances. I thought Ohio State looked pretty good for most of that game against North Carolina and kind of screwed it up and got beat at the end. A little flukish, but Ohio State, big guys. They got the freshman point guard pretty good. You know, Illinois had some moments up and down. Michigan's been up and down. Purdue's looked very good. Penn State blew out Illinois. Northwestern won again. Michigan State already lost to Northwestern. Wisconsin was solid earlier. I'm not sure what they've done lately. Minnesota's terrible. But overall, I think Michigan State, just at first blush, you asked this question. I've not had a chance to go and research it, but I'm thinking Michigan State is like a 4 games above 500 type of team in the Big Ten. That's my guess. What do you play, 20 games? 12-8? They can be better than that. I'd say conservatively 12-8, but they're going to be good at some point this season. And by March, if they stay healthy, they're going to be dangerous. 12-8, they can do better than 12-8. 13-7, 14-6 possible. When Malik Hall comes back and they get this work done during December. We're recording this on Sunday night. Tomorrow's Monday. Izzo's going to have a press conference on Monday. I don't know if we're going to be able to watch practice or not. But Izzo's never had this much inactivity in the month of December. He was looking forward to it, but you know how Izzo likes to complain about things. He complained about the schedule that he made so difficult on himself in November and December. Yesterday and this weekend, there were some great matchups in college basketball. Intersectional games, top 10 games, great. Michigan State, not a part of it. Usually Michigan State plays on Saturday of this weekend off campus, usually at Little Caesars Arena. There have been times in the past when they've played home and home neutrals, at BYU, at Texas, home and home Texas, home and home UConn, at Arizona way back years ago. They've played this weekend because this weekend there's graduation at the Breslin Center, so Michigan State is not able to play a Saturday game on this particular weekend. They've also played at the Palace against Bowling Green or Oakland University off campus, something like that. So Wichita State one time at the Palace. So they didn't do that this year. They didn't have that Saturday game because Izzo knew he was going to really tax his team in December, early December and November, so he wanted to give them a breather. So they needed the breather. They're all excited about the breather, but at some point when we get toward December 31st, is Izzo going to complain about the rust factor because they haven't played enough? Ideally, take one of those games from November, December, maybe the ACC Challenge. Izzo's never said this, but the ACC Challenge thing has been a drag sometimes. Like if you're playing and you're never really sure where they're going to ask you to play that game, you can request to not play it on a Tuesday. But if you're coming back from Maui on a Sunday and you got to play right away on a Tuesday, they've been screwed by that in the past. This year they were screwed playing Notre Dame at the end of, what happened. And Notre Dame was weighted and rested and pointed toward that game, and Michigan State was terrible that night. If you take that game against Notre Dame and instead of playing it then and you played it Saturday, that might have been the perfect balance. You beat Notre Dame, and then you're not as tired out to lose to that game to Notre Dame, and then you might not lose to the Northwestern game or one of those other ones. But Izzo played those games for a number of reasons. You have to play the ACC Challenge, but the Phil Knight thing had to play it because you want to be part of that event, which is not every year. It's every 5 years or whatever. Michigan State doesn't want to say, no, we'll be out of that. And then someone else comes to take your spot, maybe Michigan. You don't want that to happen. Gonzaga calls and says, hey, we're playing a game on aircraft carrier. You're our first choice. This was your game. You guys invented it. Even ESPN, who hates Michigan State in the Big Ten, they own the game. They're like, okay, yeah, Michigan State, you'd be the first choice. I'm not saying they hate Michigan State. I'm not going to get into that. But that's strange. All right, so Michigan State didn't really have time to do the aircraft thing, and it kind of had an accordion of negative effect on the schedule, but Izzo didn't want someone else coming in and taking that game. If they're going to play in an aircraft carrier, Izzo's like, Michigan State's going to be in it. So you know what happened with Michigan State overscheduling early part of the season. Might help them in the long run, but there were too many games there. Izzo would admit that. It would have been ideal to take one of those games. Just to thin it out by one would help. Thin it out by two would have really helped, but you want to play hard games, challenging games. Thin it out by one and move one to December 17th. That'd be ideal. It's not ideal this year on the front end and not ideal here in December when you're playing so infrequently. Now, Izzo said he's looking forward to having practices in which they can just work on themselves and get some more of the offense deployed and installed and quality control. But the best way to have quality control is to have a bunch of personal practices on you, then play a game, and then get corrections, and then having some more practices. But to have this many days without practice, I think it'll be a negative in the short term coming out of the holidays as well. Where it can start helping when you get into late January, I think Michigan State will turn the corner and do some good things there. I'm not sure about Iowa. I've not seen them much. So it's a good question. Where's Michigan State in the Big Ten? I'm thinking 5 games above 500. You talked me into it. And can be better, but I'll just conservatively say 5. I think they're going to be good. Larry P. from Washington, Michigan says, which 4th and 5th year players do you think will be back for either their redshirt year or COVID year in 2023? Who from this group that could come back do you feel will be leaving that we don't already know about? All right, the seniors you're asking about. The seniors are... All right, these are the seniors with 1 year remaining. J.D. Duplain, Nick Samac, Chris Bogle, Harold Joyner, Jacoby Windman, Aaron Brule, Chester Kimbrough, Elijah Collins, Brandon Wright, Tate Halleck. There's 10 of them. Duplain, I think, is coming back. Offensive linemen are coming back. Duplain and Samac, they're coming back. Chris Bogle, he hasn't announced it, but they could use him. He was solid against the run. Not a great pass rusher, but serviceable. Windman, sounds like Windman's coming back. Brule told me before the Indiana game he intended to come back and aside from unforeseen circumstances, I'm expecting Brule to come back. Elijah Collins says he intends to come back. He told Ricardo Cooney of SpartanMag.com that. Now, they couldn't come out and say it because they need to be invited back, and they're still going to have exit interviews. So, people like Brule and Collins didn't want to come out and say, I'm coming back, because you got to be invited back. Brandon Wright, going through the suspension, 6th-year senior. Does he come back? Not sure. Tate Halleck, does he want to go somewhere else and maybe get some better shot at playing time? Not sure. So I think those guys are coming back. Not sure about Harold Joyner. Tate Halleck, I've not heard anything that would indicate that he's leaving, but not sure there. Brandon Wright, not sure. Chester Kimbrough, I think Michigan State would like to have him back. Can he transfer again? He'd have to graduate in order to do it. He's probably close to graduating. He had an interesting season because he played a lot in 2021. This year began the season moving position to slot nickel back. Played a couple of games, struggled in the first half against Washington, and was yanked from the starting lineup and was sent to Siberia for 4 months, it seemed like. 4 games, 5 games. Then there were injuries, and he came back and played, and I didn't think he was bad. It's just strange how some players just vanish. I don't know if they've got enough roster to have people vanish like that. I don't know all the reasons or whatever, but I'm assuming Kimbrough comes back. So, there's not many of them in that category. Seniors, there's 4, 3, 6, 10. I think at least 7 come back. And they need some of those guys back. They need Duplain, they need Samac, they need Bogle, they need Winman, they need Brule. I think they need Kimbrough. They need Elijah Collins. He wants to come back. And then, Brandon Wright showed some things here and there. I mean, at defensive end, I'm not sure they've got the luxury of seeing anyone leave. Harold Joyner's not really gotten on the field. Does he look to move somewhere else for his final year? Maybe. I mean, Michigan State could maybe use that scholarship slot going to the portal themselves, but it's a good question, and we'll keep our ear to the ground on that one. Green Gringo from Parts Unknown says, any offensive lineman targets? That was one of our weakest position groups. Really need to upgrade and get some depth there. Offensive line targets, talk about Keyshawn Blackstock, junior college guy from Coffeyville. Charlie Simons is the guy that they liked, but he visited Stanford. Looks like the ship has sailed on that. They're still looking in the portal, too. So that could be something that comes along down the road. But as far as offensive linemen, high school guys, the Madden Sanker thing never really got a lot of traction. So they've got the 2, Dellinger, the kid from Clarkston, Stanton Ramil, who I think is outstanding. If you had Blackstock and maybe someone from the portal, that might be solid enough right there. Bean77 from Parts Unknown says, has Malik Hall started running? What is his status? Again, Izzo's going to have a press conference on Monday. Go to SpartanMag.com for the coverage of that. We will get a little update on Malik Hall and how he's coming around. Izzo expects Malik Hall to be available some point after Christmas. That's in the coming days. I've not heard anything bad about he seems to be on schedule from everything that I hear. Question 15, got 2 questions left here. Brian from Flushing, Michigan says, basketball question. Does Keon Coleman join the basketball team in time for the new year and the bulk of the Big Ten season and beyond? He says we could really use that size and athletic ability as a wing defending role player off the bench. It's my understanding that Keon Coleman wants to do it. We've seen him shooting around and stuff. Izzo revealed that Keon Coleman had a little bit of a hip injury late in the season, so that delayed things a little bit, but I think Izzo would like to have Coleman around doing some scout team stuff, coming along slowly, and Izzo likes his athleticism at 6'4", you're right, to play athletic defense. There was a game this year, might have been the Notre Dame game, when a couple of those guys were getting hot from the perimeter, and Michigan State was tired and, had some injuries and so forth. There were some times when Michigan State absolutely could have used Keon Coleman out there playing defense on those guys. And if you get them to play defense first, they could use that. The offense, I mean, it's hard to be a football player for 10 months out of the year and roll off the football field, change shoes, and come in and provide anything on offense. I mean, there are really, really, really good basketball players that spend all season and all their lives trying to become basketball players, and they still shoot like Tum Tum Nairn, right? You've seen it. So to have a guy who's not working on it much to come in and offer much on offense, maybe driving to the rim for something, maybe. I mean, some of you old timers might remember how good Andre Rison was at basketball in high school, right? But then when he played basketball at Michigan State, he was a role player. He could pass it around, distribute it a little bit. And Heathcote said that Andre Rison could have been an NBA player if he focused on basketball. He was that good. But those of you that remember, when he played basketball for Michigan State, he was very much a watered-down role player. He was athletic. He could play defense, but he wasn't going to be hitting step-back three-pointers. So I know Keon Coleman scored 70 a couple times in high school or something, but and defenses will be playing off of him. But look at A.J. Hoggard. He's worked on his shot, and he's become a pretty good shooter. But remember what he was as a freshman. So you can only imagine, as good of an athlete as Keon Coleman is, don't expect him to be like nailing shots from the perimeter. Anything he does scoring-wise would be gravy. But I do think at 6'4", with his athleticism, they could use some defense from him a couple minutes a half, possibly this season. All right, last question. Eric from Denver. He says, how long do you think it'll take to rebuild the defensive backfield? Did the 2022 recruits impress enough that we should feel confident that unit is on track? Great question. And, Dylan, the safeties, we talked about that with Jaden Mangum looks good. Thin guy out there, putting his body out there, winning collisions, trying to. He's just going to get stronger and better. I like Mangum a lot at safety, and I like Malik Spencer a lot at safety. Xavier Henderson told us those two guys were going to be good, and you can see it. Malik Spencer was injured for most of the year, played later in the season, and did not look out of place. Those two are good safeties. Dylan Tatum was better than I expected. When he was in high school, he was a guy that looked to me like wasn't comfortable with contact. Was a really good running back, explosive skill player on offense, and mentioned that he wanted to be a DB at the college level. Probably he's been advised that that's his best route to a professional career and maybe a longer professional career, and I don't argue with that. He's got good feet and good ability, but when he played defense as a senior in high school, he had a long way to go as a safety. I mean, he was a guy that, nothing against him, he's a bright guy, and I got a lot of respect for him as a human being. Good guy, good athlete, team-oriented guy. But in high school, he played defense like he was trying to swim without getting wet. I mean, you got to stick your nose in the fan, as Ron Big Moobie would say. I'm not saying he was running from contact. He just didn't have, he just wasn't an instinctive contact guy on defense in high school. And I was like, man, he's got a long way to go. He's got wheels, got a frame and all that. But he came out and out of necessity. He was thrown on the field, and he threw his nose in the pile. Whatever they did in practice during the course of the season, they changed him around. They took a guy with a lot of speed and ability and will, and you have to have the heart too, and they reprogrammed him. I know it because I saw it in high school. He didn't have it. 12 months later on the college field as a true freshman, not bad in terms of some of the physicality. I'm not saying he's Ronnie Lott or anything. Played some safety, played some corner. And some teams went after him, but opponents didn't really attack him like I maybe thought they might. I thought that he was going to be in survival mode at corner. Didn't turn out that way. He was solid. So it was a good first year for Dylan Tatum. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? A little bit of both? I don't know, but all three of those guys were solid. And then some. I think good futures for all three of those. Caleb Coley. I always want to call him Corey after Cole Corey. Cole Corey was the guy from Howell. Caleb Coley. I'm going to write that down and put it on the wall. Caleb Coley. All right, we didn't see him at all. Defensive back from Warner Robins, Georgia, about 6 feet, 175. I think he was injured a little bit, but they need some corner help, and he was not available to do that. Malcolm Jones, his father's called this a few times. He played a little bit on special teams, I think. Safety, 6'1", 190. He's in there with Mangum and Spencer. Not quite to their level, I don't think yet, but he's on track. He's on target. Ade Willie, corner. Ade Willie had repped as a nickel back, and I had heard that that at one point he was ahead of Chester Kimbrough. After Kimbrough was demoted, Willie was right there at second string, and then he got a little injured. So Willie was on track. Ade Willie looked for him to be a nickel in the future. So, I mean, all those guys are they're on target and on track and on schedule. I think there's one or two or three standouts in that group. So you got those guys. And who else do you have as far as defensive backs go? They brought in so many cornerbacks from the portal that they ate up a lot of scholarship slots there for a while. Marquis Lowry's still around, not really a depth guy, but Kari Crump was a young guy, and he's going to be out for at least a while. Yeah, all those guys that brought in for the portal, it was a Band-Aid there for a moment, but a lot of those guys didn't end up doing a lot. Williams started a little bit last year, didn't do much this year. Amir Speed started a lot, but struggled. So they need some of those young guys to come along. Let's go back over to the comments section before we sign off. Marlo Milano says Jalen Thompson from Cass Tech is a man-child too. Defensive end, maybe defensive tackle long-term. Mark Galfano, and Jalen Thompson's a 4-star. Is he top 5 in the state of Michigan? I'll have to go back and look at his senior film again. He's all right. Mark Galfano says, do you feel the entire coaching staff is staying into 2023? I think most fans felt a few changes are needed. Mark, I agree with you. A lot of fans do believe that. Do I think they're all staying? I'm not sure. I really don't know. The only person that knows is Mel Tucker. Has he spoken about that with one or two people? Maybe. But there's not going to be any changes right now before signing day. We'll know more the days after that. But I really don't know. I've not heard. But I really don't know. You're right, though. Some fans would agree with you on that. YT Sparty says, go Green, go Lions. C-Dog says, I would not be surprised to see a change at special teams coach. YT Spartan says, yeah, special teams was the most obvious problem. YT Spartan says, you don't realize how important a field goal kicker is until you don't have one. YT Sparty says, U of M probably loses games without a field goal kicker. Probably right. Mark Galfano says, all facets of special teams were rough. Coverage, snaps, kicks, returns, kickoffs. Only a couple Reed returns saved it from being an F grade for the season. YT Sparty says, but then Reed fumbled 2 times on punts, including the big one against Indiana, right? C-Dog says, all right, we've got a little conversation here about special teams. I'll just go down a little further. Matt Roach says, where do you get your recruiting rankings? I'm on 3, has them number 23, and that's by far the highest ranking. On 3, it was 21 before the latest decommitment. Recruiting rankings I was talking about, Rivals.com has them 45 right now in points, and Star Average, Rivals.com has them number 19. So on 3, it's consensus number 23 or so. I guess it depends on whether you put more stock into the overall depth of the class or Star Average. I don't know where 24/7 has Michigan State ranked. Mark Galfano says, indeed, some of the only... All right, they're talking about special teams some more. YT Sparty says, D'Antonio knew how to find great 3-stars. I'd agree with that, including, he says, Darquez Denard. Mike Wynn says, I appreciate both of you guys' objective and informed analysis. I think he's talking about Ron Armstrong and I. YT Spartan says, Dante Moore going to UCLA to look for more money. Yeah, UCLA is starting to get involved in the money game now. They, for a long time, they weren't really sure how dedicated to the enterprise they were, but UCLA had a good year this year, and they're starting to get into it more. I've always thought UCLA was kind of a sleeping giant, but there's a lot of problems there too. Rick Neuheisel talks about that a lot on his show, about becoming dedicated to the enterprise. A guy named People First says, question about Darius Snow, any update? No, I've not heard anything about Darius Snow. And that injury was serious. And nothing official's come out on that. But I was talking about linebackers a moment ago, and you may have noticed I didn't include him in it. I'm not really expecting him to be part of it next year. Now, that's not from inside information necessarily. Like Mel Tucker said, he told Darius Snow to not listen to anybody and what they might say to him about what his long-term potential may or may not be. You can read into that however you want, but it was a type of injury that we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be difficult. Don Juan says, any idea where we sit with the Texas A&M transfer? He visited Miami and California this week. Tunmise, I can't pronounce his last name. I can look it up. Tunmise. We'll just go by his first name. Tunmise. I've not heard. And that one, it's NIL season. So Miami's strong in that category. Michigan State's serious about the kid from Florida State. They're talking to the kid from Liberty, Dre Butler. So Michigan State has some plan Bs going there a little bit. Dane McBain says, I think we need to spend to get the first legit 5-star, and then the others may follow. Might be right about that. Michigan State was interested in Dante Moore. He's a 5-star. It would have cost a lot. Would that have been the guy? I don't know. Offensive line, is that the guy? I don't know. Interesting point. Steve Meyer says, go green from McKinney, Texas. Logan Augustine says, hey, Comp, I was wondering if there was any word on Darius Snow, if he's going to be back next season, and if X Henderson is thinking about coming back for another year. No, Xavier Henderson's not coming back for another year. Darius Snow, no word. And like I said a moment ago, not sure. Yeah, like Henry says, Xavier Henderson, I think actually Henderson could come back. He'd come back for for a 6th year. YT Sparty says, I think C.J. Stroud kind of slumped after getting his $200,000 car. C.J. Stroud, I said against Rutgers, was not good when he had a little bit of pressure. Most quarterbacks do have a little bit of problem when there's a little bit of pressure, but Stroud, he's okay. Sea-Dog says, they used to make you sit out a season in the old days for a reason if you're a transfer. He says they didn't want kids just jumping from school to school every year. True. And I had a friend of mine, and this is true, I might even I might make this my quote, because I don't mean to plagiarize my man Stroker out there, but he says it's easier to change teams in college football right now than it is to change teams in Little League baseball. Fact for most communities. It's usually Little League, you're on the same team for 2 years, and it's hard to change teams. It's harder to change Little League teams than it is college football teams. I know. With athletics, part of it's sewn in from year to year. You have some continuity because that's the way that's the way that makes sense. Player freedom thing, good for them, but does it hurt the team? Does it hurt the fans? Is it all for the players? Maybe so, but I don't know. I don't know where it's all going to end up. Gorgeous Nona says Ohio State has 2 opt-outs for the Peach Bowl. I've not seen that. That's Ohio State has a little bit of a diva problem there. And that used to be the problem Michigan had. But since Urban Meyer's left, they've really become more and more of individualistic, soft. They beat the hell out of Michigan State. Everybody knows that. And they should with the talent that they have. But when they meet a team with similar talent, they're losing. They're a little low on fabric, a little low on soul there a little bit at Ohio State. I think everybody's seeing that now. Doors fan 91 wants to, do we think Bryce Underwood will be another Dante Moore type of prospect after his junior season? No, I mean, he might be pretty good. He has a lot of offers, but I don't think he's Dante Moore. No. All right, what do we have here? I think that's about it. Got some more here, but we've been going long enough. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. We might have another one maybe Tuesday night. YT Spartan says still no word on the Kyrie Crump legal issue. There was supposed to be a pre-trial hearing on December 15th, but it's my understanding everything's been adjourned to January. We'll have to wait and see what happens this week, but that's what one lawyer told me of the people that he was representing. There's a lot of posts here at the end. I hate to glance over all of them, but I certainly appreciate all the posts and all the questions, the mailbag questions of the bunker, and everybody that's given us a thumbs up and given us a like, and the people that have become subscribers here to this channel. And please consider becoming a subscriber over at SpartanMag.com. We'd love to have you over there. $1 get you through August 31st. You'll check out our coverage over there. We'd really love to have you over there. Appreciate all the posts, all the comments, and all the people watching, taking time out of your busy day to join us here in December, wherever you are, whether you're in the desert or out west or out east or New York or D.C., Florida, Texas. We get comments from all over the country. We appreciate that. And we love our Michiganders too. Warm up. Have a good signing week. And we'll see you on Wednesday, SpartanMag.com, and all during the week. Appreciate everybody, and we will see you next time. Let me find my button here. Where's the button at? So I can sign off. I got so many windows open here. That's when you can tell it's been a busy show, because I got windows all over the place looking up stuff like quarterback rankings and this. I don't know where the heck it is. Oh, here it is. Anyway, appreciate everybody coming on and being a part of it, and especially the great, generous personal sponsorships that we received from Don. Who else do we have here? I better go back there and check that out because they were very. Yeah, Don. That's for you, Don. Thank you to Don. Hope you didn't drink too much tonight. And thank you to Joe Joslin. Love you too. And Brett Burgess. Brett Burgess coming in strong. All you guys, thanks a lot. And everybody have a good signing week. Go to SpartanMag.com for continued coverage. We'll see you next time. Thanks for checking out Spartan Mag Live.